Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had a hidden agenda part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story apprentice of weiserr from 𝐴3. So let's start the video. 𝐬𝐸 Midoriya once read that you should never make any major decisions during the month of February, something about it being the most depressing month of the year. He's not exactly certain it's an accurate statement, would need to read up more on the psychology of February to verify, but still, it's the thought that circles his mind as he gazes upon the dimly lit screen of his laptop, eyes scanning the Facebook profile displayed before him. Don't make big decisions in February. Don't make big decisions in February. Don't make big decisions in February. He sighs, closing out of the browser before he can think twice about it. Then leans back against the headboard of his bed, head thunking lightly against the wood. It was for the best, probably. He had a lot on his plate anyway, between school and work and writing. He didn't need another distraction. 𝐬𝐸 closes his laptop, setting it on his nightstand before removing his round-framed glasses, rubbing at his eyes. He'd have to simmer on this idea of his for a while, carefully weigh the pros and cons, maybe draw up an elaborate chart or something. He's been meaning to break in that new whiteboard he impulse bought last week. This would be the perfect opportunity for it, but it'd have to wait. 𝐬𝐸's shoulders slump, replacing his glasses on his nose and running a hand through his thick curls. He's got places to be. A quick shower later, and 𝐬𝐸 is on his way to Hero's Diner, a local diner just a few blocks down from his place, famous for its superhero-themed decor and menu. It's a favorite of his, many of his most cherished memories happening within its pop culture-clad walls, like when his softball team celebrated their first Little League win, or when that newly hired waitress accidentally spilled a whole tray of milkshakes on 𝐀𝐦. But more than that, it's the place he and his dad really bonded, late-night ice cream cravings turning into heartfelt midnight talks. He'd never felt closer to his dad than in those moments, never felt more seen, more loved, until his dad walked out on them. That is. But hey, 10 years later and 𝐬𝐸 isn't even bitter at all. 𝐬𝐸 pushes open the glass door to Hero's, the cheerful ring of a bell announcing his arrival. He's greeted immediately by the familiar waitress at the counter, her bright red lips pulled into a smile. Hey, long time no see. Your mom's already waiting for you. The usual table. Thanks, 𝐬𝐸 smiles back, ducking his head in gratitude before making his way towards the back of the diner. Sure enough, nestled in the worn leather corner booth sits his mom, chin resting in her manicured hand as she laughs at something her companion, an aging man with graying hair and crow's feet edging his pale eyes, says. Ugh, 𝐬𝐸 forgot James was going to be here. James Matsuda, his mom's new husband, his new stepdad. Well, new isn't the right term for it anymore, he supposes, the two having married in the summer before his senior year of high school, almost 2 years ago now, by his count. Still, it's easy for 𝐬𝐸 to forget the man exists sometimes, considering how far away he lives and how often he misses family events for work, plus the small fact that 𝐬𝐸 wishes he didn't exist. But that's neither here nor there. And look, it's not that James is a bad guy, it's just that well, maybe 𝐬𝐸 has some unresolved issues regarding paternal figures in his life. It happens, but 𝐬𝐸 never says any of this out loud, to his family, at least. He's not sure how many late-night shifts at the convenience store have been spent ranting about the situation to 𝐾𝐻. Those talks notwithstanding, 𝐬𝐸 has been nothing but supportive of his mom and James. He knows James makes her happy, knows they love each other, that they're good for each other, and the last thing he'd ever want to do is ruin that. So like the mature adult he is, he bottles his ill feelings, burying them deep within his core so that he can treat the other man with perfect civility, even if the very thought of the man makes him want to throw up. Look, 𝐬𝐸 is actually a really nice guy. He swears. He doesn't mean to think so rudely of James. It's just that his inner voice is a bit of a jerk sometimes. It's probably Katsuki's fault. Maybe 𝐬𝐸 should have listened better when his mom warned him about bad influences. Oh well. His mom looks up as 𝐬𝐸 approaches, her lips curving up into a grin as she rises to embrace him. 𝐬𝐸, oh, it's so good to see you. 𝐬𝐸 wraps his arms around her, returning the tight hug. Hey, Mom. James also comes to stand by the pair, having awkwardly scooched along the seat to escape the booth. He extends a hand to 𝐬𝐸 when the embrace ends. 𝐬𝐸 quickly shakes the other man's hand. James' only saving grace is probably the fact that he's never once insisted upon 𝐬𝐸 calling him dad. 𝐬𝐸 respects him for that. They all take seats in the booth, his mother now occupying the middle space between the two men. There's a waitress by soon to take drink orders, and while they wait for her return, his mom and James make small talk with him, asking about his schooling, his work, what else he's been up to. He doesn't have a lot to share. It's not like he's ever been much of a wild child. but the two still act interested in the banality of his coursework and meager hobbies. But as their drinks arrive, Izuku ordering an extra creamy milkshake despite his lactose intolerance. The conversation soon drifts to the real reason they were meeting for lunch today. His mom and James had some major news to share. Izuku thinks he already knows what it is. So, his mom begins, nails clicking against her glass as she taps her fingers. James and I have been trying to figure out the best time to tell you this, but well, we won't be able to hide it for much longer, so we figured now is as good a time as any. Izuku takes a long slurp from his milkshake, waiting patiently for his mom to continue. He's not sure why she's stalling like this. It's not like she's never had this conversation before. Izuku, she says needlessly, reaching over to clasp James' hand in her own as she smiles, I'm pregnant. Called it. Cool. Izuku stirs up his shake, mixing the whipped cream into the rest. So you're not upset? Because we would understand if you were. Nope, Izuku replies, popping the P sound to show just how unbothered he is by the situation. I think it's great that you're having another kid. It'll be cool to have a sibling. And it's not entirely a lie. He really does think having a sibling would be cool. He just also wishes that sibling weren't, 19 years younger than him. Okay, maybe he's not as unbothered by the situation as he claims he is. It's not that he's mad about the situation. Deep down, he really is happy that his mom and James are taking this big step in their relationship. It's just that, even deeper down, he can't help but feel weird about the whole thing. Sure, people remarry and have kids all the time, but to do it when both partners are so advanced in age, when both already have children who have graduated high school, it's weird. Really, if Izuku were planning to have kids, not that he is, mind you, he's happily ace and single, thank you very much, then his kids would potentially have an aunt or uncle born within a decade of them. So no, it's not a bad thing, it's just weird. He also may be having trouble coming to terms with the fact that the child would share DNA with James. But that's more likely out of pettiness than anything else. He explains as much to Katsuki later that night, when both boys are posted behind the front counter at Corner Convenience. It's especially dead tonight, as it usually is during the late hours on weekdays. Izuku idly spins on an old stool behind the counter, the joints creaking with every pass, while Katsuki leans against the countertop, bent over an open math textbook and scribbling away viciously on a sheet of graph paper. The position is probably really hard on his back, Izuku thinks, being all hunched over like that. Besides, the other boy constantly has to push his blonde hair back from his eyes, the locks at the top of his head much longer than the rest, and it's probably impeding his progress. Katsuki would be much better off if he pulled the other stool up to the counter to do his work. But Izuku doesn't point any of this out. He'd rather not have a textbook thrown at his head tonight. I mean, can you even imagine what their child might look like? He says instead. I mean, don't get me wrong, my mother is gorgeous. But James, he's just so ... Izuku waves his hand, searching for the right word. Plain. I don't care, Katsuki grinds out, gaze never wavering from his book. Izuku carries on unperturbed. I mean, what if they're born with a receding hairline? What if they're bald by middle school? Man, that poor kid's in for a rough time. Shut up. Or like, what if James convinces my mom to name the kid something weird and modern, like Princess or Wellington? Or worse, what if they give them like a grown adult name, like Linda? Seriously, just stop talking. I don't know, maybe I'm blowing this out of proportion. I mean, chances are it's gonna be a completely normal kid. Maybe the situation isn't weird. I'm just being weird about it. He pauses in his spinning, vision swimming as he looks at Katsuki's back. I don't know. What do you think? I think you should fuck off and let me do my work. But I'm having a crisis. Oh my god, Katsuki groans, pencil pausing on paper as he tips his head back. Why haven't you been fired yet? Because I'm a respectful and dependable employee who always provides quality service to our customers. Why haven't I quit yet? Izuku knows it's rhetorical, but he answers anyway. Because you need the money and can't be bothered to find a new job. Besides, you'd probably have trouble finding a new job with your personality as it is. Izuku nearly falls off his stool, startled by the loud smack of Katsuki slapping his textbook shut with unnecessary force, the other boy quickly shoving his items into his backpack. That's it. I'm going to clean the washrooms. He tosses his backpack back under the counter, then jabs a finger at Izuku, fixing him with a threatening glare. Don't you dare bother me unless it's an emergency. And I mean a store burning down, gun to the head emergency, not you needing me to cover the front so you can run across the street and pet a dog. But that was an emergency. Katsuki's nostrils flare, and his mouth opens wide to scream a reply before he catches himself, jaws snapping shut with an audible click of his teeth. Eyes closed, he takes a deep breath, withdrawing his extended hand and running it through his tousled hair. Finally, his eyes reopen, still narrowed in a glare. But at least he only sounds mildly homicidal when he says, "Don't bother me." With that, the other boy turns on his heel and sets off to his task. Good riddance too. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 absolutely did not want that job tonight. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 sighs, rising from the stool to stand up at the counter. He's feeling a bit better about the whole pregnant mom thing now thanks to his conversation with 𝐘𝐦. Honestly, the other boy had been more responsive than usual, even if those responses were just various iterations of shut up. Maybe he's finally making progress with 𝐘𝐦. Maybe he just caught him in a good mood. 𝐘𝐦 𝐬𝐻 𝐍𝐴𝐭 𝐖𝐡𝐚 something. Their relationship has been nothing short of complicated lately. Well, for the past few years, really. He's practically known the other boy his whole life, their moms being close friends. And while the two boys were practically inseparable for the majority of their childhood, their relationship quickly took a turn for the worse when 𝐘𝐦 turned mean. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 still doesn't know what had happened to cause such a shift in his friend. His mother blames puberty, but 𝐬𝐡𝐢 isn't sure how many boys hit puberty at 9 years old. Still, things got really bad between the two in middle school, with a couple trips to the principal's office thrown into the mix, and then finally high school hit and things settled down, surprisingly. Maybe it was a maturity thing. Maybe 𝐘𝐦 found other pursuits to fuel his anger into, or maybe he finally found someone who could temper his, well, temper. Whatever the case, the two generally managed to avoid each other, and now, freshly graduated and attending university, the two have managed to perfect the air of feigned civility between them. They can play nice, but all the while something strange churns just beneath the surface, a certain tension underlying forced courtesies. They're not quite friends, not quite enemies, but still share a bond deeper than simple acquaintanceship. They're just complicated. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 wishes they could be friends. He misses being friends with 𝐘𝐦. The alarm chimes at the opening of the door, pulling 𝐬𝐡𝐢 from his thoughts. He greets the customer, a grizzled trucker by the looks of it, kindly, then takes to adjusting the various displays on the counter to make himself look busy while he waits for the man to finish his browsing. A few moments pass, and soon 𝐬𝐡𝐢 is ringing the man through and wishing him a good night as he leaves, before being left alone to his thoughts once again. Man, 𝐘𝐦 was really taking his time with the washrooms. They must have been really bad. And 𝐘𝐦's always been something of a perfectionist. Or maybe he's in the break room, messing around on his phone. That's probably a more accurate assumption. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 leans his forearms against the counter, tapping away idly at the smooth tiled top. Despite his lack of advice-giving capabilities, 𝐘𝐦 really was a good listener. Maybe it was his lack of advice-giving that made him a good listener. Sometimes, all 𝐬𝐡𝐢 needed was someone to talk to who wouldn't try to solve all his problems. It was nice just being able to rant. It wasn't nice to be left alone at the front counter, but baby steps. Still, he thinks back on their conversation. The more he considers the situation, the more he realizes that he's the one making things weird. Age differences aside, there was nothing strange about two mature people in a relationship wanting to have a kid together. End of story. No, the real problem is the fact that 𝐬𝐡𝐢 is still dealing with things, or rather, he's been avoiding dealing with things. And now, faced with a brand new chapter of his life, he's being held back by his past. He hasn't gotten closure, hasn't gotten over those past traumas. If he's going to move forward with his life and accept what is to come, he first needs to deal with what's already happened. That makes sense, right? He thinks it does. And it's that thought that brings him back to his laptop after returning home from his shift, screen displaying that Facebook profile once again. He takes a deep breath, steeling his nerves. He's been running away from this for too long. It's about time he's learned to deal. He enters an address into the Maps app on his phone, tracing a route from his current location, judging the time, the distance. He saves the location. February or not, 𝐬𝐡𝐢 is about to make a very big decision. Absolutely not. But 𝐬𝐻 whines, ignoring the many glares sent his way by the library's other patrons. It's important. Please. 𝐘𝐦 doesn't even look up from his book. Absolutely fucking not. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 sighs dramatically, flopping back in the uncomfortable plastic chair. Okay, he definitely knew 𝐘𝐦 wouldn't agree to it right away, but still, you can't blame a guy for being hopeful. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 had managed to track 𝐘𝐦 down at the university library. Despite the other boy's rough exterior, he really was dedicated to his studies. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 supposes he has to be, being in the pre-law program and all. After getting through the initial "what the fuck are you doing here, stop stalking me you fucking obsessive freak" part of the conversation, 𝐬𝐡𝐢 had asked a simple favor: drive him all the way from quaint little Regina, Saskatchewan to Reno, Nevada. No big deal really. Predictably, 𝐘𝐦 said no. Luckily, 𝐬𝐡𝐢 has known his not quite a friend but not quite an enemy but still more than an acquaintance for practically his whole life, so he's basically gotten the other boy's behavior down to a science. 𝐘𝐦's got this cool, disinterested persona that he likes to hide behind, so he can't agree to just anything right away, even if he is excited by the prospect. It's just not how he rolls. But 𝐬𝐡𝐢 knows how to play this game. He just has to make the prospect of a multi-day road trip seem more enticing. Come on, 𝐘𝐦. You're the only person I know who has both his full license and a car. Izuku reasons, hoping to play to his ego. Katsuki doesn't budge. That's because all your friends are losers. You're my friend, Izuku hazards. Like fuck I am. Okay, how about I pay for everything? Izuku offers, changing tactics. Gas, meals, hotels, tacky souvenirs, bail, you name it, I'll cover it. He's been saving money for a while now, and although he hadn't planned on spending it all on a road trip, Izuku was willing to make this sacrifice. Katsuki looks over the top of his book at Izuku, squinting despite the thick framed glasses adorning his face perfecting his vision. Man, it had been so funny when the boy, who had constantly made fun of Izuku's glasses, ended up needing a prescription after their teacher reported to his mom that he was always squinting at the whiteboard. Thinking back, Izuku is pretty sure Katsuki never was squinting at the board. The teacher was just racist. Still, Katsuki wound up needing glasses for reading, so no longer could he use insults such as 4 eyes on Izuku, which never really perturbed the boy. Middle school Kaken was quite the creative cusser. Nowadays, he just says fuck. Case in point, not a fucking chance. Izuku sighs. He had really been hoping to avoid this, but it seems he has no choice. If he's going to convince Katsuki to drive him to Nevada, he'll have to beg for it. He takes a deep, exaggerated breath. Katsuki's eyes widen. Wait, don't. But it's too late to stop him now. Please, 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 please. Oh my god, just shut up. Please, 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 please. Katsuki practically launches himself across the table at Izuku, clamping his hands firmly over his mouth to quell the incessant onslaught of pleas. Dirty looks are being thrown their way, but Izuku pays them no mind, too preoccupied with the actual image of death emblazoned in Katsuki's red eyes. I'm going to remove my hands now, Katsuki hisses, unblinking, and when I do, you're not going to say a single fucking word, got it? 'Cause if you do, I will maim your body so thoroughly, they'll need dental records to identify your corpse. Hesitantly, Izuku nods his head in agreement, and Katsuki withdraws his hands, settling back into his seat and picking up his discarded book. He flips off the remaining onlookers before turning his attention back to his work, and briefly Izuku wonders what it's like to live life with such a blatant disregard for other people. Maybe he'd ask Katsuki about it someday. Izuku waits for Katsuki's anger to simmer back down to a more stable level before pressing again. But he's cut off quickly, Katsuki snapping his book shut with way too much force. More restrained, he lays the book on the table, setting his glasses on top and rubbing at his eyes. After a long exhale, he asks, why do you want to go to Reno of all places? I mean, Vegas I kind of get, but Reno? But that's the thing, Izuku can't exactly tell Katsuki the real reason for the trip. Really, how do you even tell someone that I've been low-key stalking my missing father for years now and think I've finally tracked him to a few possible locations in Reno, Nevada? So I need to head down there and confront him so I can get closure and finally move on with the rest of my life. Instead, he tells him, my horoscope told me to be spontaneous. Katsuki quirks a brow at him. Okay, fine. There's a fan con happening in Reno over the break, and I really want to go because 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐸 is going to be there. 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐸, a personal hero of Izuku's, and author of only the best superhero series ever written, All Might, symbol of peace, which inspired a TV series of the same name. Katsuki rolls his eyes. Of course, I have to meet him. Take a plane. You know air travel makes me queasy. Not my problem. Come on, Kaken. Izuku tries to reason. I know you want to meet him too. You love his books just as much as I do, if not more. That was before I grew out of that nerd shit, Katsuki says, and Izuku doesn't point out the lie in his words. He knows full well Katsuki is still very much into that nerd shit, he just isn't as obvious about it anymore, thanks to the aforementioned cool guy persona. Besides, Katsuki continues, even if I did want to meet him, I wouldn't drive across the country to do it. I mean, there are plenty of cons that are much closer to here than Nevada is. Just wait for him to visit one of those. But what if he doesn't come any closer? I can't risk it. This could be my only chance. Izuku leans his elbow on the table, hands fisting into his green curls. I mean, I could just up and die tomorrow. Keep talking to me and you will. Then discard my body in a ditch somewhere in Reno. I don't care. Just as long as I get there. I mean, seriously. He lets his hands drop noisily on the table. Does none of this sound even slightly enticing to you? Look, Katsuki leans forward on the table, elbows resting against the wood top and hands steepled in front of him. My issue here is not with the road trip itself. In fact, going on a spontaneous cross-country road trip is on my list of things to do before I die. Written right there before died tragically in a massive bar fight in a gay club in Montreal. Wait, you want to die how? Katsuki ignores the question. My real issue, he continues, is the fact that it's a road trip with you. Izuku blinks. But seriously, Montreal. The other boy shrugs a shoulder. It's what I deserve. Okay, Izuku would have to unpack all that later, but right now, he's got a job to do. Fine, what if I invite more people? Refer back to the point about all your friends being losers. They don't have to be my friends, Izuku says. He's been holding on to his greatest weapon for some time now, unsure of how best to wield it in this particular battle. But Katsuki's created an opening, and Izuku is prepared to go for the kill. I'll invite 𝐲𝐬 Kirishima, Katsuki's greatest weakness, his closest friend and the only person he would ever openly admit to liking. If Izuku could get 𝐲𝐬 on board, he'd have Katsuki no problem. For a moment, Katsuki seems to actually consider this, leaning back in his chair and pulling a knee into his chest. Still, he tries to argue. Even if I did want to go, I probably couldn't. I mean, we might not have enough time over break for the trip. And there's no way we could get that much time off from work on such short notice, considering we're both already on the schedule. I've timed it out already. And as long as we stick to my very precise schedule, we'll make it in plenty of time. And don't you worry about work, I'll cover that too. He shrugs. I mean, Mama Lee already loves me, so I'm sure I could convince her. I'll just bat my eyelashes a bit. No problem. Loretta Lee, affectionately called Mama Lee, manager of Corner Convenience and Izuku's self-appointed grandmother. She claims Izuku is the grandchild she never had, though Izuku is certain her numerous actual grandchildren wouldn't be too pleased by that title. Katsuki wrinkles his nose. You disgust me. You're just jealous. Katsuki ignores the comment, the subtle tightening of his arms around his raised leg the only sign of him physically restraining himself from lashing out over it. Whatever, even if we did get time off, that doesn't mean 𝐲𝐬's free. He's probably got football shit to do or something. Or maybe he won't even want to come. True, Izuku concedes with a shrug. Guess I'll just have to ask him. Which is how Izuku finds himself in the university's crowded gym for the first time in his life. It had taken considerable effort to pry the football player's schedule from Katsuki, Izuku miraculously managing to escape with only minimal damage. Apparently, 𝐲𝐬 usually uses the time between his morning and afternoon classes to work out, with Tuesdays being leg day for the athlete. Feeling very much like an alien on a foreign planet, Izuku weaves his way between sweaty bodies and intimidating equipment in search of 𝐲𝐬. He finds the redhead seated at a machine he believes this species calls a leg press, resting between sets of the exercise. His light gray muscle shirt is soaked through with sweat around the neck and chest, and he swipes away moisture from his forehead with a towel. His eyes widen at the sight of Izuku approaching, and he quickly hops up from the machine to greet him, arm extended toward him. Hey, Izuku. Good to see you, bud. Hey, Izuku returns the greeting, gingerly taking 𝐲𝐬's extended hand. However, he's soon pulled into one of those weird bro hugs, half handshake, half hug, oh man, and it's disgusting being pressed even briefly against 𝐲𝐬's sweat-soaked body, but Izuku endures nevertheless. As a foreigner in this land, it's important he observe and practice its people's strange customs. So what brings you to the gym, man? I don't think I've ever seen you here before. It's my first time, actually. I didn't even know this place existed before now. I figured I should start working out though. Self-care and all that. 𝐲𝐬 claps him on the back, nearly toppling the weaker boy over. Seriously, the guy must be all muscle. That's awesome, bro. Never too late to start taking care of yourself. And hey, if you need any help with anything, just let me know. I'd be more than happy to give you a few pointers. Thanks, bro, Izuku replies, the foreign word feeling weird on his tongue. 𝐲𝐬 grins before returning to his machine, setting up for another round. Izuku follows him. Okay, no, actually I lied. I have no interest in working out. I actually just came to talk to you. Oh, 𝐲𝐬 begins his reps, legs pressing against the weight plate. What about, 𝐾𝐿 and I are going on a road trip to Nevada over break, and we were wondering if you wanted to tag along. Izuku jumps, startled by the loud crash of the weight plate against its stops, 𝐲𝐬 having dropped it suddenly. He's not sure if the move was intentional or not. Wait. 𝐾𝐿 agreed to a road trip with you. That's wild. I mean, no offense to you or anything. It's just surprising he'd agree considering your guy's complicationship. Complicationship. I like it. Izuku nods, committing the term to memory. And technically, 𝐾𝐿 hasn't agreed to it yet. His decision kinda hinges on whether or not you come along. So basically, you need me to convince 𝐾𝐿 to drive you to Nevada. Basically, yes. Hey yo. A new voice chimes in, and Izuku glances over to see Denki approaching. What's this I hear about Nevada? Denki Kaminari, another friend of 𝐲𝐬 and Katsuki's. Izuku doesn't know him very well, always having run in different circles than the electric blonde, but from what little Izuku knows of him, he seems like a nice guy. Denki leans against a nearby machine, hair pushed back with a trendy hairband, athleisure wear devoid of any signs of sweat. He's got an easy grin on his face as he waits, apparently not caring if he interrupted a conversation or not, or maybe not noticing. God, to have that confidence. Izuku's just invited me on a road trip. 𝐲𝐬 tells his friend, unaffected by his sudden appearance. Apparently he and Katsuki are heading to Nevada. Well, 𝐾𝐿 is only potentially coming. Izuku clarifies. 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐭 whistles in impress. Man, to even get a potential agreement from him. He reaches over to clap Izuku on the back. It's not meant to be painful, but Izuku winces all the same. Not bad, bud. How'd you do it? Got some serious blackmail material or something? He's using me as leverage, 𝐲𝐬 explains, setting up for another round on the leg press. If I agree to come, 𝐻'll come too. Potentially, Izuku repeats. It all depends on whether or not 𝐀𝐭's love for 𝐲𝐬 outweighs his hate for me. Well, maybe I should tag along, sweeten the deal a little, 𝐍𝐭 suggests with a wink. I mean, there's no way 𝐀𝐭 hates you more than he loves I and me. 𝐲𝐬 snorts. Bold of you to assume he doesn't hate you more than he hates Izuku. Hey now, don't be like that. Katsuki loves me. 𝐍𝐭 whines, crossing his arms over his chest. He's just an asshole. And okay, they can't argue with that. Izuku weighs his options, considering the possible pros and cons of including more people in the trip. It'd be more expensive, but 𝐲𝐬 and 𝐍𝐭 might be alright with pitching in a little. It'd be more crowded in the car, but even then it would probably be more comfortable than a tense silence between him and Katsuki. It'd be more time-consuming, potentially, since 𝐍𝐭 seems like the type to want to stop at every neat little town or touristy spot. But then again, with Katsuki driving, they'd be lucky to even get adequate bathroom breaks. Finally, Izuku shrugs. If you really want to come along, I'm sure it would be fine. My dude, it'll be more than fine, 𝐍𝐭 declares, hands on his hips. I'm practically a road trip god. This trip is gonna be nothing short of legendary thanks to me. 𝐲𝐬 pushes himself up off the machine, going to retrieve the cleaning spray and rag. Dude, wasn't your last roadie the Lethbridge trip? Nope. 𝐍𝐭 interrupts, shooting him a dirty look. I have no idea what you're talking about. That never happened. Okay, bud, sure, 𝐲𝐬 smirks. The charter bus bathroom just randomly. But I'm curious, 𝐍𝐭 says, quickly changing the subject. Why a road trip to Nevada? Is it a horoscope thing or something? Izuku nods. I'm supposed to be spontaneous and take risks. Cheers to that, man. 𝐍𝐭 holds his hand out for a high five, and Izuku claps his hand against the other boy's, hiding his wince at the painful smack of skin on skin. 𝐲𝐬 just chuckles, finishing wiping down the exercise machine before turning to Izuku. Well, I think the road trip sounds like fun. I'm definitely down, just as long as my schedule allows it. When were you wanting to leave and get back? I was hoping to head out early Saturday morning. We'd get down to Nevada in about 2 days, stay there for 2 days, and then drive back after. Izuku counts the days off on his fingers, so we'd probably get back on the following Friday. But of course we can adjust the timeline a bit if need be. Sounds good to me, 𝐲𝐬 replies. I'm pretty sure coach is giving the team the break off from practice, give us time to fully recuperate, but I'll double check and get back to you. Izuku and 𝐲𝐬 exchange numbers, and soon the boys are parting ways, 𝐲𝐬 and 𝐍𝐭 returning to their workouts and Izuku heading literally anywhere that isn't the gym. As he exits the facility, he notices a flutter in his stomach, nerves or excitement, he can't tell. But the pieces of his plan are slowly starting to come together. If all goes well, he'll be in Reno by about this time next week, and for the first time in almost 10 years, Izuku may finally see his dad again. No matter how hard he tries, Katsuki can't figure out exactly how Izuku managed to coerce not only him, but also 𝐲𝐬 and 𝐍𝐭 into joining him on this road trip, nor can he determine just how this nerd got everything organized and planned so quickly. When Izuku had brought the idea forth earlier that week, it had seemed like such a spontaneous thing, a stupid impulse, a whim. But given the preparedness of the boy in question now, Katsuki wonders if maybe he had been working on this plan for a long time now. That would explain how the bastard so seemingly effortlessly managed to manipulate Katsuki into this. Really, it's not like he's got his own secret, selfish reason for going on this trip. Of course not. That'd be ridiculous. 𝐲𝐬 lightly bumps Katsuki's shoulder as he passes by, grinning that stupidly blinding grin of his as he stuffs his duffel bag into the trunk of Katsuki's car. There's a familiar heat that blooms in Katsuki's chest, and he turns his attention back to checking fluid levels to distract himself from the feeling. Okay, so maybe he's got 2 secret, selfish reasons. Sue him. Katsuki slips the dipstick back into its slot, satisfied with his car's condition. Of the many accomplishments achieved in his current 19 years of life, perhaps his most proud was buying his own car. And sure, maybe his black second-hand 𝐴𝐴 barely constitutes a car, but Katsuki loves it anyway. Others may see this achievement as fickle compared to his others, but he holds it in high regard anyway. It's the only thing he had ever done purely for himself, not to please some other figure in his life, not to gain status over another, but simply to quell a desire burning within his own soul. A desire for independence, for freedom. His parents hadn't been too thrilled by his choice in car, concerned with its age and condition, but Katsuki had gone ahead with it despite that, or out of spite, maybe. And yeah, he'd had to put a bit of work into the little 4-door, but it was worth it. He lets the hood fall shut with a metallic thunk, dusting off his hands. "Are you fuckers ready yet?" Aye, Captain," 𝐬𝐻𝐸 says with a mock salute as 𝐈 closes the trunk. The cargo has been secured. She's all ready to set sail. 𝐘𝐻𝐸 feels a headache coming on already. "Why are you even here?" But it's 𝐈 that answers. "Because we love and appreciate him," he says, rounding the front of the car to stand next to 𝐘𝐻𝐸. "Everything looking good up here. Better now that you're here." 𝐘𝐻𝐸 coughs, pushing the thought away before it can make its way anywhere near his tongue. "Yeah, this old clunker shouldn't be giving us any trouble." 𝐈 grins, cheeks dimpled, crimson eyes shining in the early morning sun. "Hell yeah, man, I'm so pumped for this. Road trip 2020. We should make this like an annual thing or something." And the idea doesn't sound too bad when 𝐈 says it. Or maybe 𝐘𝐻𝐸's just a little biased. His lips curve into a small grin, the redhead's excitement contagious. Maybe this trip would be fun. Of course, stupid little Deku has to go and ruin everything by opening his mouth. Izuku has his face pressed into a sheet of paper, a printout from Google Maps, if 𝐘𝐻𝐸's not mistaken. The lettering's probably too small to be of much use, though. Dumbass. He doesn't look up from the page as he says, "We should get going now. It'll take us about an hour and a half to get to the border, and I figured we'd stop for lunch once we hit Sydney, just under 4 hours from now." "Don't tell me what to do," 𝐘𝐻𝐸 says, still opening the driver's side door and climbing into his seat. He wasn't listening to Izuku's directions. He was about to get into the car anyways. The timing was just coincidental, that's all. "Woo, road trip, road trip." 𝐬𝐻𝐸 starts chanting, climbing into the back seat. 𝐈 laughs, joining in on the chant. Meanwhile, Izuku pulls open the passenger side door, about to climb in, and nope, no way is that happening. "Backseat, nerd," 𝐘𝐻𝐸 growls, pinning the other boy with a glare. Only 𝐈 has shotgun privileges. Izuku pauses, halfway in the car. "But I need to navigate, and it's easier to do that in the front seat. Backseat or roof, your pick." Izuku glances over at 𝐈, who just shrugs. "Sorry, man. His car, his rules." The curly-haired boy sighs, stepping out of the car and climbing instead into the backseat next to 𝐬𝐻𝐸. 𝐈 slips into the passenger seat, chuckling slightly, shaking his head. "Jerk. Deal with it." He glances into the rear-view mirror, checking to make sure the two occupants had their seatbelts on. He briefly meets Izuku's gaze. Gross, does the nerd even realize how stupid he looks? Dark green eyes appearing slightly larger behind the round lenses of his glasses, a splash of freckles across his cheeks and nose, a curly mop of hair lying haphazardly on his head. Seriously, he looks like a 12-year-old. And 𝐘𝐻𝐸 would have to put up with seeing his stupid face around a lot now. Why did I agree to this? 𝐈 clicks his seatbelt into place, shooting 𝐘𝐻𝐸 a thumbs up. "All set. Let's roll." "Oh yeah, that's why. Alright losers, y'all have better remembered to use the bathroom this morning, cause I'm not stopping this car until we hit the border, and after that, I'm not stopping until Sydney. Got it?" "Yes mom," 𝐬𝐻𝐸 snickers. 𝐘𝐻𝐸 flips him off. "According to my map, you need to head south on Highway 6, Izuku says, and 𝐘𝐻𝐸 rolls his eyes. "I know how to get to the border, nerd. I don't need your shitty directions." Besides, he opens the center console and pulls out a small box. "I borrowed my old man's GPS. We're all set." 𝐈 takes the box, pulling the dusty GPS from within. "I don't know, man. Does this thing even work?" "Of course it works. I'm not an idiot. I already tested it." 𝐈 looks skeptical, but he concedes with a shrug. "If you say so. And yeah, okay, maybe the GPS does look prehistoric. But it'll probably be fine, right? It's better than taking directions from Deku, at least." 𝐈 grabs the aux cord and plugs it into his phone as 𝐘𝐻𝐸 shifts the car into drive, pulling away from the curb. "I was up all night crafting the perfect road trip playlist," the redhead announces, scrolling through his phone. "You guys are gonna love this." The music fades in. The familiar bars of Rascal Flatts' Life is a highway pouring in through the speakers, and 𝐘𝐻𝐸 groans. "You've got to be fucking kidding me." Okay, rough start. But there's more where that came from. 𝐈 skips ahead to the next song. "On the Road Again" starts up. Skip. The fucking road song from SpongeBob plays. They ban 𝐈 from DJ duty. "Hey, pass the aux back here," 𝐬𝐻𝐸 says, plugging the offered cord into his phone. Thankfully, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 usually has pretty decent playlists that span multiple music genres, so 𝐘𝐻𝐸's okay with him taking over music duty. Well, mostly okay. "We're skipping any song I don't like." They skip a lot of songs before they even leave the city. Finally out on the highway, 𝐘𝐻𝐸 sets the cruise at a cool 110 before making himself more comfortable in his seat, slipping the shoe from his left foot so he can set it on the edge of his seat, arm resting against his raised knee. "Why do you sit like that when you drive?" 𝐘𝐻𝐸's gaze flicks up to the rear view, meeting Izuku's inquisitive one. "Gross." He turns his eyes back to the road. "'Cause I'm gay, shut up." Beside him, 𝐻𝐡𝐬 chimes in, yeah Zuko, don't be homophobic. Yeah Zuko, love is love, Denki adds. Izuku throws his hands up in defense. Okay, sorry, he says. Geez, don't hate me cause I'm ace. Katsuki quirks a brow at this as 𝐻𝐻𝐬 asks, wait, you're ace? I didn't know that. And for the life of him, Katsuki can't remember if he knew that either. The nerd probably mentioned it at some point, during one of his tangents that Katsuki always ignored. Wow, only 10 minutes into this trip and we're bonding already. Man, we got quite the crew, don't we? Denki observes. We've practically covered the whole spectrum. Right? Katsuki drawls, rolling his eyes. Gay, bi, ace, and dumb bitch. He makes sure to meet Denki's gaze in the rear view when he says the last part. I didn't know dumb bitch was part of the LGBT, Izuku says, and Katsuki genuinely cannot tell if he's joking or not. Denki plays along with the joke. It's included in the plus part. Nah, I thought it was more like a blanket term, kind of like queer, 𝐻𝐻𝐬 states. But not everyone likes being called queer, Denki points out. Katsuki snorts. But everyone's fine with being called dumb bitch. Exactly. It looks like Denki is about to say something more. But he's quickly distracted when the song changes. Dude, I love this song. Crank it up. No, skip this shit. But Katsuki's protest is drowned out by obnoxiously loud music as 𝐻𝐻𝐬 turns the volume dial. He holds his hands over the knob to prevent Katsuki from readjusting the volume. It doesn't stop him from at least trying. But in the end, it's no use. Katsuki resigns himself to his fate, the frame of the car practically vibrating with the thrum of heavy bass as both 𝐻𝐻𝐬 and Denki scream along with the lyrics. Yep, he definitely has a headache now. Katsuki sighs, but the sound is swallowed by the music. This is going to be a long trip. They reach the border crossing a little over an hour and a half later. Katsuki turns the stereo off, and his passengers grumble in annoyance. He rolls his eyes. Suck it up. There's no way they'll let us across if we pull up blasting this shit. Please, they'd probably love my playlist, Denki declares, snapping his fingers. I'd put this place on blast. A pause, then his eyes widen, realizing what he's just said. No, wait, I didn't mean it like that. Katsuki pulls up to the border crossing. There's a car in line ahead of them already, so he shifts his own into park. He turns around partially in his seat to fix the two in the back with a threatening glare. Okay, here's the deal. Do not speak, not one single fucking word, unless you're directly spoken to. And even then, only short answers. No jokes, no wisecracks, just straight to the point. Got it. Denki and Izuku nod, mouths tightly pressed shut as they mime locking their lips and throwing away the key. Katsuki fixes them with one last lingering glare before turning back around in his seat. Good. The car ahead pulls away, and Katsuki drives up in its place, rolling down the windows and shutting the car off. He glances at 𝐻𝐻𝐬. Passports, right here. The redhead hands the stack over. Katsuki accepts them with a nod. The border services officer approaches the car. He's an angry-looking guy, face creased with deep wrinkles, a thick graying mustache brushing his top lip, uniform jacket pulled tight over a protruding beer belly. He walks slowly, hands on his hips, taking an unnecessarily long time to span the short distance from the office to the car. Once there, he leans his forearm against the top of the car, bending over to peer in through the window, taking in each of the occupants. Katsuki taps his fingers on the top of the steering wheel, waiting. Nervous, not that he'd admit to anyone. Fuck, he hates border crossings. The man's gray eyes seem to linger on Izuku a little longer. Shit, are they going to let his 12-year-old looking ass through? Should they have gotten Auntie and Co to write him a permission slip or something? Was it too late to call her? Finally, the officer turns his attention back to Katsuki, and the latter releases the breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, fingers loosening their white-knuckle grip on the steering wheel. When had he even grabbed it? Morning. His voice is deep and rumbles from deep within his chest. Morning, Katsuki echoes, before tacking on a quick, sir. The man hums. Passports. Katsuki hands them over wordlessly. The officer retreats to the office with their documents, passing them along to his co-worker. Then he's back at the window, leaning in again. Where are you boys off to? They run through the spiel, Katsuki providing simple, honest answers to each of the officer's questions. Reason for visit, length of visit, date of last crossing, yada yada. Overall, the process goes quite smoothly, and Katsuki feels his shoulders relax finally. Maybe border crossing wasn't as bad as he had thought. Of course, it's always the ones you love who hurt you the most in the end. Are you transporting any weapons, firearms, ammunition, etc. with you this morning? The officer asks, but before Katsuki can answer, 𝐻𝐻𝐬 chimes in. No sir, just these guns, the redhead says with a grin, flexing his biceps beneath the short sleeves of his t-shirt. The officer meets Katsuki's eyes. Boy, Katsuki sighs. I'll pull off to the side. They sit in the lobby of the border crossing agency, silently stewing. Or at least, that's what Katsuki's doing. Izuku is wandering the room. reading bulletin boards or whatever nerd shit he was up to, like 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 really cared. Denki sits to his right, playing a stupid game on his phone. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 sits to his left, whistling an innocent tune as though this whole situation wasn't his fault. The sound grates on his nerves. Fortunately, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 stops a moment later, letting silence settle over the group. Unfortunately, he decides to fill that silence with words. So, does this count as racial profiling? He asks jokingly, glancing back and forth between his companions. No one speaks, but the dirty looks sent his way by the three boys, and even the woman at the front desk, send the message loud and clear. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 sighs. Yeah, I regretted it as soon as I said it. Sorry, God. Katsuki's never speaking to this boy again. A while later, and the boys are allowed to return to the car. The officers thankfully didn't tear apart the entire car, but they did leave the boys' luggage strewn about. Maybe they were having a bad day. Maybe they were trying to teach a bunch of teenage boys a lesson on border crossing etiquette. Either way, things could have gone much worse. The thought does little to placate him. Katsuki's never felt closer to committing homicide in his entire life, but he does his best to rein his temper in. Blunt nails digging into his biceps even through the thick cotton of his bunny hug as he stands with his arms crossed against his chest, watching as Izuku and Denki make quick work of repacking the car. Surprisingly, the two had yet to say a single thing throughout the entire ordeal, taking Katsuki's threats to heart. 𝐻𝐻𝐬𝐬, on the other hand, hasn't stopped apologizing since leaving the lobby, trailing after Katsuki like a wounded animal. Katsuki doesn't look at him, knowing his friend's puppy dog eyes would be enough to break his infuriated resolve, largely ignoring the other's attempts at reconciliation. Was it childish? Probably. Did he care? Not even a little. Soon the car is repacked, and the boys clamber back in. The officer sends them off with a warning to behave, and Katsuki feels his gaze boring into his back long after they've left his field of vision. Honestly, fuck border crossings. They drive in silence for a while, the drone of tires on the pavement the only discernible sound. It's 𝐻𝐻𝐬𝐬 who speaks up first. Katsuki, I really am sorry. I was just trying to make a joke. The guy looked like he needed some cheering up, and I thought I was being funny. I didn't mean any harm by it, I swear. Katsuki keeps his gaze locked firmly on the road, refusing to acknowledge 𝐻𝐻𝐬𝐬's words. Petty tantrums were a specialty of Katsuki's. He could keep this up all day. At least, he could if his opponent weren't 𝐻𝐻𝐬𝐬. Come on, man. I made a mistake, I know. I won't let it happen again, though. Promise. Katsuki clenches his jaw but says nothing. He hears 𝐻𝐻𝐬𝐬 sigh, then feels a hand reach across the center console and entangle itself with his own. Don't ignore me, Kat. Come on, just say something. Please. Fuck. Katsuki clicks his tongue, eyes still fixed forward. Fine, but you're on thin fucking ice, got it? Screw up again and I'm revoking your shotgun privileges indefinitely. Y'all can squish in the back for all I care. Katsuki doesn't have to look to know the redhead is grinning. Thanks, bro. I won't let you down. He feels 𝐻𝐻𝐬𝐬 squeeze his hand briefly before withdrawing his own, and Katsuki suddenly misses the contact. Stupid fucking brain. Whatever, Katsuki mumbles, turning the sound system back on to distract himself. From the backseat, Denki pipes up, "Can we talk yet?" Katsuki hums in consideration. No, Denki pouts in response. And the more distance they put between themselves and the border crossing, the more Katsuki feels his heart rate settle and his blood pressure drop to normal ranges. The drive relaxes him, fingers tapping the wheel along to the beat of the music, watching his friend from the corner of his eye as 𝐻𝐻𝐬𝐬 animatedly sings along. And soon he has to fight to hold back the smile that threatens his lips. Okay, he has to admit, it was a pretty good joke. Katsuki, pull over. I've gotta pee. Denki squirms in his seat next to Izuku, straining against his seatbelt as he leans against the front seat. But despite his pleas, Katsuki makes no move to stop. We're like 5 minutes from Sydney. Hold it. Dude, I've been holding it. Denki whines. Come on, 𝐻𝐻𝐬𝐬. Help me out here. 𝐻𝐻𝐬𝐬 doesn't even look up from his phone. Sorry man, should have gone when we stopped in Plentywood. I didn't have to go then. Denki flops back in his seat, pulling his legs into his chest before turning his big golden eyes on Izuku. Izuku, help me out. Izuku shrugs, feeling a twinge of sympathy for the other boy. Sorry, but I think I'd be the opposite of help. Denki groans, head thunking back against the headrest, eyes squeezed shut. Katsuki, I swear to God. He cracks his eyes open, glaring up at the boy in the front seat. If you don't pull over in the next 5 seconds, I'm pissing all over your car. Don't even test me. Katsuki looks up to meet Denki's eyes in the rear view, and Izuku is glad he's not on the receiving end of that murderous gaze. You wouldn't dare. Denki just grins. Bet. Izuku yelps, slamming against his seatbelt as Katsuki smashes his foot down on the brakes, quickly pulling over onto the shoulder of the highway. He shifts the car into park, removes his seatbelt, and climbs out in one fluid motion, slamming the door shut with a little too much force. Oh fuck. Denki wrestles with his seatbelt, struggling to unbuckle and flee before 𝐻𝐸 can reach him. 𝐈𝐻 has yet to look up from his phone. 𝐬𝐸 sits plastered to the side door, eyes wide as 𝐻𝐸 rips open Denki's door, the latter shrieking, "Cat, wait, don't!" 𝐻𝐸 practically drags the other boy from the car, tossing him into the snowy ditch. Denki yelps from the cold, scrambling to his feet as 𝐻𝐸 bears down on him. 𝐬𝐸 watches the scene unfold, concern growing in his core. Is he? Denki's fine, 𝐈𝐻 replies, unaffected by the ordeal. Cat'll rough him up a bit, but he wouldn't actually hurt him. 𝐬𝐸 wishes he'd had that luxury in middle school. So this has happened before. 𝐈𝐻 hums an affirmation. More often than you'd think. He finally looks up from his phone, glancing over at the dash. He rolls his eyes before reaching across and clicking the hazards on. Come on, cat. It's basic etiquette. 𝐬𝐸 watches as Denki throws snow at 𝐻𝐸, trying to stop the charging boy. 𝐻𝐸 doesn't relent, simply dodging out of the way before sweeping Denki's feet, knocking him to the ground. Denki yelps in pain, and 𝐻𝐸 shouts something at him that 𝐬𝐸 doesn't catch. Then 𝐻𝐸's making his way back towards the car, leaving Denki behind. So, did you have any places in mind for lunch? 𝐈𝐻 asks, drawing 𝐬𝐸's attention back to him. 𝐬𝐸 shakes his head. I wasn't sure what everyone liked, so I didn't want to pick a place just in case. There are quite a few places off the main drive we could go to though. Also, I wasn't sure if we actually wanted to stop and eat in somewhere, or if we'd grab fast food and go. I'm not sure if 𝐻𝐸's okay with people eating in his car, but he seems like he wouldn't be. What are you saying about me, nerd? 𝐻𝐸 asks as he climbs into the car. He's calling you a neat freak, 𝐈𝐻 helpfully supplies, grinning back at 𝐬𝐸. 𝐬𝐸 raises his hands in defense. I didn't say that. I mean, I implied it, but it's alright, dude, it's totally true. 𝐈𝐻 punches 𝐻𝐸 playfully on the shoulder, then laughs and sticks his tongue out at the other's glare. Alright, I'm good now, Denki announces as he returns to the car. His clothes are damp, his hair a mess, but he seems to be in a much better mood than before. Don't get my seats wet, 𝐻𝐸 growls at him as he climbs in. It's your fault if I do, Denki points out. You're the one who threw me in the snow, and I'll do it again if you don't shut your mouth. Make me. So, 𝐈𝐻 interrupts, clapping his hands together. Food. They end up stopping at a quaint Mexican food restaurant once they reach Sydney. It's Denki's choice, enthralled by the massive sombrero adorning the restaurant's roof, and none of the other boys care enough to argue. Honestly, 𝐬𝐸 is surprised by how agreeable the group can be, especially considering their volatile dynamic. He supposes the bond of hunger between men is truly the most transcendent. They head inside, and immediately 𝐬𝐸 is bombarded by the sound of overzealous mariachi music and the smell of refried beans. The walls are an obnoxious shade of yellow, with shiny blue tiling climbing halfway up their expanses, and the floors covered in a rough linoleum probably meant to imitate street pavers, like the place is trying for an outdoorsy Mexican market vibe. There are cacti in flowers, and string lights and sombreros scattered haphazardly about, and a mural of dancing senoritas in colorful skirts splayed across a brick wall. It's kinda kitschy, in 𝐬𝐸's opinion, and he's not really sure how to feel about the whole setup. It seems appropriated, but then again, he's not exactly an expert on Mexican culture. The others seem unsure of how to interpret their surroundings as well, or maybe they're simply still trying to take in their eccentric surroundings. 𝐈𝐻's head is on a constant swivel, somewhat resembling an anxious hen, assuming hens can even be anxious, while Denki examines a cactus statue, testing the sharpness of an artificial needle with a fingertip, withdrawing his hand with a pained yelp when it turns out to be quite sharp. 𝐻𝐸's having a staring contest with a creepy life-size mariachi man, red eyes glaring into painted ones as though the statue personally offended him, and maybe it did. 𝐬𝐸 could never tell what exactly went on in 𝐻𝐸's head. Hola, the hostess greets them, pronouncing the H, and 𝐬𝐸 thinks he actually flinches. She's got a massive grin spread across her face that's gotta be fake. There's no way a person would smile like that naturally, and her pale cheeks are coated in a thick layer of blush. Welcome everybody. For how many? 4, please, 𝐈𝐻 says, attention focused on the hostess now, somehow managing to match her grin with his own. Okay, so maybe 𝐬𝐸 had been wrong after all. She gathers up the menus, still smiling. Right this way. She takes off, brunette curls bouncing as she walks, and the boys follow after her, 𝐈� grabbing 𝐻𝐸 by the arm and tugging him away from the statue. The hostess leads them to a side booth, its high-backed seats cornered with thick brick columns. She sets the menus down on the table as the boys slide in. Your server will be right with you. Thank you, 𝐈� calls after her as she springs away. He's seated across from 𝐬𝐸 on the outside of the booth, sprawled out and seeming to take up most of the room. Not that 𝐻𝐸, seated to the redhead's left, seems to mind. He's got his face buried in his menu. She seems nice. Get her number, Denki tells him, fiddling with the salt shaker. He's seated on Izuku's right and has thankfully left plenty of room between the two of them. Not that Izuku doesn't want the other boy near him, he just prefers not being jabbed by elbows as he eats. And Denki, scrawny as he is, seems like he'd have sharp elbows. Picking up his menu, 𝐼𝐻𝐻 shrugs. She's not my type. I prefer blondes. 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬 seems to bury his face deeper in his menu. And Izuku wonders if he's having trouble reading the small print. Maybe he should have worn his glasses. The hostess returns a moment later. So, our servers are actually super busy right now, so I'll be taking care of you boys this afternoon, if that's alright with you. Izuku does his best to subtly glance around the restaurant. Only 3 other tables are presently occupied. 𝐼𝐻𝐻, apparently the group's self-appointed spokesperson, answers for them. Sure, I don't see anything wrong with that. Perfect. She withdraws a pen and notepad from her apron, clicking the pen loudly. My name's Amanda. What can I get you to drink? I'll have an iced tea, please, 𝐼𝐻𝐻 says, before turning to 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬. You just want a water. 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬, who has since put his menu down, glares at the redhead. I can order for myself. He turns his attention to Amanda. A water. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 elbows him. Please. All right. She scribbles onto her pad before turning to the other side of the table. And how about you, hot stuff? Corona. Margarita. It takes Izuku a moment to realize she's talking to him. His eyes widen. I'm 19. I won't tell. She winks at him. He'll have an orange juice, 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬 interjects, saving Izuku from answering. At 𝐼𝐻𝐻's expectant glance, he tacks on, please. Of course, gotta get that vitamin C, Amanda says, scribbling it down. Though I've always preferred vitamin D, she winks at him again. Izuku slouches in his seat, willing the smooth vinyl to swallow him. 𝐼𝐻𝐻's got his palm shoved against his mouth, eyes crinkled and face red as he tries to stifle his laughter. Izuku doesn't want to see how the others are delighting in his discomfort. The hostess-turned-waitress clicks her pen shut, stuffing it and her notepad back into her apron. All right, I'll be right back with your drinks. With that, she takes off, 𝐼𝐻𝐻 removing his hand from his mouth to call a quick thanks. After her, when she's out of earshot, the redhead loses it. Oh my god, vitamin D, what the fuck? She didn't take my drink order, Denki says, dejected. Good. 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬 picks up his menu again, unsympathetic. Now you won't piss your pants in my car. Are you guys serious? 𝐼𝐻𝐻 asks, still trying to rein in his laughter. How are you not finding this absolutely hilarious? The last thing I ever wanted to see was someone flirt with that loser, 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬 says, not looking up. It's disgusting. I don't know. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 fixes his gaze on Izuku, eyes roaming his face with deep concentration, and Izuku lets himself sink deeper into his seat. Between the freckles and the glasses, he's got that whole cute nerd look going on. I think it's working for him. 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬 drops his menu to the table. He looks like he's 12. Being attracted to him is practically pedophilia. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 crinkles his nose. Dude, don't make it gross. It already is. And Izuku is inclined to agree with him, though for different reasons, of course. Amanda returns soon after, balancing a tray of drinks and complimentary chips and salsa. Izuku forces himself to sit up straight in his seat as she distributes them. He can't let her know that he's affected by her flirting. Otherwise she may get the impression that he likes it. All right, sorry about the wait, Amanda says, tucking the now empty tray beneath her arm. Are you ready to order yet? It's then that Izuku realizes that 3/4 of their table hadn't even looked at the menu yet. She's looking directly at Izuku, waiting, but it's 𝐼𝐻𝐻 who speaks. Actually, can we get a few more minutes, please? He must have come to the same realization as Izuku. No worries. Her eyes don't leave Izuku. Is there anything else I can get for you? She bats her eyelashes. Izuku keeps his face blank. Yeah, can I get a Coke? Denki asks, drawing Amanda's attention away. Thank God. She slaps a hand over her mouth. Yes, oh my god. I'm so sorry, I forgot. I'll be right back. She scampers away hurriedly, and Izuku's shoulders relax. He turns his attention to the laminated menu before him. Meanwhile, 𝐼𝐻𝐻 takes the lemon wedge from the rim of his glass and plops it into 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬's water, leaning against the other's shoulder to peer at his menu. Anything looking good here? Look at your own menu and find out, 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬 says, but doesn't actually push 𝐼𝐻𝐻 away. He picks up his spoon with his free hand and mixes the lemon into his water. Don't be ridiculous, cat, 𝐼𝐻𝐻 says, flipping the page of the boy's menu. You know I can't read. 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬 rolls his eyes. But if Izuku isn't mistaken, he does shift the menu ever so slightly closer to the redhead. There's something about the interaction that warms Izuku's chest. 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬 had never been inclined to making friends. Not even when they were young, before their falling out. His bullheadedness made it difficult to get along with others unless they too could match that tenacity. And it only got worse with age. 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬, ever the perfectionist, didn't like other people hanging around him, claiming that they would only drag him down. Maybe that's why he ditched Izuku in the end. He didn't want the boy, so broken and weak at the time, to hold him back. But it's different now, Izuku notes with some degree of pride in his former friend. Maybe he had gotten over his fear of intimacy. Maybe he had simply found those he considered as equals. Whatever the case, Izuku is happy for his friend. He's finally grown up. I can read, but not this menu. Half of these words are in Spanish, Denki says, pulling Izuku from his thoughts. You know, Denks, we use words like tortilla and salsa and taco in English too, 𝐸 says teasingly. That's not what I mean. Denki points to something on the menu, showing it Izuku. Zuku, what does this say? Izuku shrugs. I don't speak Spanish. Katsuki snorts. Of course you don't. 𝐸 gives him a look. You don't speak Spanish either. Fuck off. Eres con palo. Denki squints at his menu, stumbling over the pronunciation. What do you think that is? Something with chicken, 𝐸 says. He points to something on Katsuki's menu. I want that. Nacho burrito. It suits me, yeah. I don't know how to answer that, Katsuki says, closing the menu. Just agree with me. I am a gourmet entree. 𝐸 wiggles his eyebrows. A shitty entree, Katsuki corrects, pushing the latter's face away. You give me heartburn. That sounds pretty gay. Bro, Denki chimes in, gaze still fixated on his menu. He leans closer to Izuku, pointing to another menu item. Flautas. What do you think that is? Izuku just shrugs. I'm gay, Katsuki points out, reaching for his water. Everything I say sounds gay by default. Now hurry up and pick something so we can order. Denki ignores him, still going over the menu with Izuku. Do you think it'd be spicy? It sounds spicy. I'm really not the person to be asking, Izuku says. Denki straightens back up. Whatever. I'm just gonna get the enchiladas Mexico. At least I can actually pronounce it. And right on cue, as though she had been watching and waiting for them to make their decisions, Amanda returns, placing Denki's drink on the table. Sorry again about that. Are you ready to order? Izuku realizes he still hasn't looked through his menu. But the others begin ordering, not wanting to waste any more time. Izuku flips through his menu quickly, barely registering the words on the page as the others place their orders, and by the time the waitress turns her attention on him, he still doesn't know what he wants. I'll just have what he's getting, he says, gesturing to Denki. It was probably a safe enough choice. Amanda scribbles it down. Good choice. That's one of my favorites. Odd she didn't point that out when Denki ordered it. All right, I'll be back again right away with your meals. She gathers up the menus, looking directly at Izuku when she says, try not to miss me too much. With that, she disappears. Izuku lets his head drop to the table, thunking solidly against the wood. You okay there, man? 𝐸 asks, concern undermined by the amusement in his voice. Izuku lifts his head from the table, rubbing at the soreness. Okay, so maybe it wasn't his smartest move. Just great, thanks for asking. 𝐸 shrugs, scooping up some salsa on a tortilla chip and shoving it into his mouth. Anything for you, bro. Don't talk with your mouth full, Katsuki scolds him. Okay, mom, 𝐸 replies, mouth still full. But seriously, Denki says. Also helping himself to the chips, why is it that the ace gets all the female attention? It's the allure of the unobtainable, 𝐸 explains. Or like when straights go after gays to try and convert them. It's less about attraction, and more about some twisted sense of power, like they're so superior in their sex appeal that they can even change people's orientations. 𝐸 pauses a minute, letting his words sink in. Then, he shrugs. Or maybe it's just the freckles. Katsuki makes a retching noise. Their food arrives shortly after, and thankfully Amanda doesn't linger long at the table, just long enough to warn Izuku that his plate is hot, but not as hot as him. Wink wink. 𝐸 and Denki teasingly as she departs, while Katsuki appears to be contemplating stabbing himself with his fork. Still, their meal proceeds without too much fanfare, with Izuku quietly eating his enchiladas while 𝐸 and Denki take turns swiping food from Katsuki's plate, dodging around the latter's attempts at skewering them with a fork. The trio has an interesting dynamic. Izuku thinks much different than his own friends. Ochako and Tenya, Izuku's closest friends, tended to be much more reserved, with outlandish conversations occurring only at the most extremes of time. In contrast, rambunctious behavior seemed to be standard for Katsuki, 𝐸, and Denki. It must be exhausting, Izuku thinks, watching as Katsuki's fork finally connects with Denki's hand, the latter yelping in pain, having to put up with extroverts all the time. It's no wonder Kaken's always angry. But then again, there's a certain fondness in the boy's gaze, unnoticeable to the untrained eye, as he watches Denki tend to his battle wound, so maybe Katsuki isn't nearly as angry as he claims to be. Amanda returns with the bill eventually, as well as a small dish containing 2 fried balls topped with whipped cream. She places the bowl in front of Izuku, who immediately stutters, but I know, she interrupts, grinning widely at him. It's a gift. She winks at him. Enjoy. Denki whistles as she saunters away. $10 says she left her number on the check. Please, none of us are stupid enough to take that bet, Katsuki says as 𝐸 reaches for the bill. Yup, 𝐬𝐬 says, showing the bill to the others. Her number, complete with little hearts. Izuku pokes at one of the breaded balls, piercing it to find ice cream on the inside. He sighs. I'm lactose intolerant, but I'm not. 𝐬𝐬 quickly swipes the dessert from Izuku, stabbing in with his own fork and shoveling a massive scoop into his mouth. Hey, don't hog it all, Denki shouts, grabbing his spoon to help himself to the dessert. The two of them finish it in less than a minute. 𝐬𝐬 offers a bite to Katsuki, trying to feed the ice cream directly into the other's mouth, but Katsuki rejects the offer, face heating with either rage or a blush. Izuku can't tell. They pay their bills, and although Izuku offers to pay Katsuki's as per their initial agreement, 𝐬𝐬 guilts Katsuki into paying his own, stating that a true bro doesn't make another bro pay for him. Finally, they're climbing back into the car, appetites sated, ready to embark on the next leg of their journey. But before they leave Sydney, Katsuki pulls the car into a gas station. He kills the engine before demanding, "Everyone out. Go use the washroom and whatever else you need to do. Don't look at me when you say that." Denki protests, but does as he's told. Shortly after, 𝐬𝐬, Denki, and Izuku have finished their business and are browsing the gas station's tacky Montana souvenirs, waiting for Katsuki to finishing filling the car. 𝐬𝐬's got a pair of Montana-shaped shades on while Denki sports a Montana-branded ball cap, posing for a picture when they hear the front door chime. Three heads turn towards the sound, expecting to see Katsuki enter, but the man who struts into the gas station is decidedly not their hot-headed friend. And okay, Izuku knows you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. He's all for inclusion, all things being as they are. And really, the guy's basically what you'd expect of someone sauntering into a gas station: worn-out jeans, stubble-lined jaw, tinted shades. None of that was cause for concern. No, what really set off his danger sensors, what sent adrenaline coursing through his veins and his heart race, was the massive rifle the man cradled under his arm. The others slowly remove their adornments, replacing them on the racks without looking away from the man. The man pays the trio no mind, though, approaching the front counter and laying his gun across the top, greeting the cashier like an old friend. The cashier doesn't seem too concerned, barely even acknowledging the gun as he engages in conversation. "Guys," Denki whispers, Adam's apple bobbing as he swallows, "that's a gun." "Yeah man, we've seen guns before," 𝐬𝐬 replies, voice lowered. "Should we?" "I think it's fine," 𝐬𝐬 says, eyes still focused on the man. The worker doesn't seem worried. "We're probably just overreacting." "Okay, but get this," Denki hisses, then gestures towards himself and Izuku. "Not all of us are built like fucking tanks. I don't think having muscle really makes a difference in this situation," 𝐬𝐬 points out, subtly backing away despite his previous assertion that they were overreacting. "Let's just get out of here," Izuku says, already making his way slowly towards the door. "Whatever the situation, we're better off outside." The two boys nod in agreement, following after Izuku. He pulls the door open, wincing at the signaling chime. But when he glances back over his shoulder, neither the gunman nor the cashier had acknowledged them. Once outside, the boys take off at a near sprint towards the car, running into a confused Katsuki along the way. "What are you?" "No time to explain. Just don't go in yet." 𝐬𝐬 grabs him by the arm, pulling him back towards the car. "What?" Katsuki allows himself to be pulled back to the car. "What do you mean I can't go in? I've got to pay for the gas still." He freezes, then a deep glare settles over his features. "What did you fuckers do?" "Nothing, just look." 𝐬𝐬 subtly gestures towards the door of the gas station, which has just opened, the gunman exiting with his rifle slung over his shoulder. Katsuki's eyes widen. "What the fuck?" "Our thoughts exactly." The man crawls into a lifted white pickup, the engine roaring to life moments after. It's obnoxiously loud. The smokestack's already rolling thick smoke as the truck reverses out of its parking spot, taking off out of the lot and onto the road. When it's finally out of sight, Izuku feels himself relax. He hears Denki exhale loudly. "Okay," Katsuki says simply, still staring after the truck. "Get in the car. I'm paying for this gas, then we're getting the hell out of Dodge." They're more than happy to comply. There's a little bit of a delay leaving Sydney, but then again, it was bound to happen eventually. "According to my map, you just need to head south on 16. I know that already. I told you I don't need your stupid map. It's not stupid, and I'm just trying to help. I don't need your help. I need you to shut up." "Okay." 𝐬𝐬 cuts in, pushing Katsuki back into the driver's seat, preventing him from actually jumping into the backseat and maiming Izuku. "Let's just all take a deep breath and chill out." Katsuki growls, but settles into his seat, well, as settled as he can be, what with the tension still apparent in his heightened shoulders and white-knuckle grip on the wheel. Izuku lets himself slump back in his seat, paper map still clutched in his hand. He takes a deep breath, then releases it slowly. 𝐬𝐬 nods in satisfaction. "Okay, now let's figure this out." 𝐬𝐬, ever the mediator, continues. "You both have literally come up with the exact same plan, so I'm not sure exactly why you're arguing." But he stresses the last word when Katsuki opens his mouth to protest. Cutting his friend off, maybe we should try using the GPS if it'll make Kat feel better. I don't need to feel better, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 spits, fixing the redhead with a side-eye glare. I need the nerd to shut up and let me drive. I would feel better if 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 at least used the GPS, 𝐬𝐡𝐬 supplies timidly, bracing himself for the imminent storm. No one cares how you feel, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 bites back, whipping around in his seat and fixing 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬 with burning red eyes. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 sticks an arm across the seats, preventing 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 from proceeding any further. So shut the fuck up. Kat, stop being such an asshole, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 scolds him forcefully. Seriously, you're acting so unnecessarily right now. Oh, so I'm unnecessary. The glare is turned on 𝐬𝐻𝐬, and 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬 finally feels like he can breathe again. This conversation is what's unnecessary. I know where I'm going, so everyone should just let me drive without offering all your stupid little directions. I don't need the map. I don't need the GPS. I'm fine. Why'd you bring the GPS if you don't need it? Denki asks, head tipped back on his headrest. He seems bored of the argument, attempting to balance a tube of lip balm on his nose. Because, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬 groans, spinning back around to sit properly in his seat. Fuck you, okay? This is what's gonna happen, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 decides, fixing everyone with a firm look. I'm turning on the GPS, I'm setting it to Billings, and then we will drive there. Whether Kat listens to it or not, he adds before 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬 can protest. We will have it on as a precaution. We will get to Billings, check into a hotel, and get some sleep since apparently we all need more time out of this car. Okay. They all agree, Denki indifferent and 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬 miffed, but an agreement nonetheless. 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬 reminds himself to thank 𝐬𝐻𝐬 later. There's no way he could have survived a road trip with 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬 without the redhead around to mediate. If not for 𝐬𝐻𝐬𝐬, 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬 is confident they wouldn't have even made it out of Regina, not alive, at least. I'll even book the hotel right now, while I've still got Wi-Fi, 𝐬𝐻𝐬𝐬 continues, pulling up the browser on his phone. Look, there's a decent one that's not too expensive. I'll book us a room, 2 rooms, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬 interrupts. There's no way I'm sharing a bed with any of you losers. 𝐬𝐻𝐬𝐬 looks like he wants to argue, but he simply presses his lips together, quelling his frustration. Okay, fine. I'll find a cheaper hotel and book 2 rooms for His Majesty over here. Fuck you. You don't have the guts. 𝐬𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬 doesn't look up from his phone, doesn't even seem to think much of what he said. But 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 looks like he chokes on air for a moment before finally regaining his composure. I'm turning the GPS on. We've wasted enough time already. He makes quick work of the GPS, getting the hotel address from 𝐬𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬 once the other has booked their rooms and plugging it in. The route calculates quickly, and soon an electronic female voice fills the car. Head south on Mount 16. Head south on Mount 16, they all echo mockingly. There's a pause, the boys all looking at each other, glancing back and forth between gazes. Finally, 𝐬𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬 cracks a smile. And soon Denki breaks into laughter, 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 following shortly after. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬's quiet, but there's a small smirk on his lips. So apparently, Denki says, getting his laughter in check, we all share one brain. Don't insult me, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 says, putting the car into drive before pulling out onto the road. Sorry, Mr. Valedictorian, Denki replies, not sounding sorry at all. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 flips him off. You know, I still find it surprising that Kat got valedictorian over 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬, 𝐬𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 says. What's that supposed to mean? Kakin earned it, 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 says before 𝐬𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 can reply. He worked harder than anyone else did. He deserved it more than me. Damn right I did. And don't you forget it. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 pulls the car onto the highway, and the GPS chimes in again. In the next 80 kilometers, proceed straight. The fuck you just call me? 𝐬𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 snorts. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 glares at him in the rear view. Don't laugh at my jokes. I don't make them for your amusement. 𝐬𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 sighs, rubbing a tired hand across his forehead. Seriously, man, so unnecessary. When 𝐬𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 Okay, maybe crack house is a little dramatic, but Izuku can't help it. He had just spent almost 8 hours in the same car as Katsuki. Peeling paint, tattered shingles, a broken sign. That's what greets the boys as they pull up in front of the hotel. It's situated above a bar, the building itself looking like a converted farmhouse, the remnants of a front balcony still evident from the boarded-up door floating randomly in the second-story wall. There are flower beds overgrown with weeds having long since succumbed to the cold, while the parking lot is more pothole than pavement at this point. The whole place looks dirty and dreary, and there is no way Izuku is sleeping in there. Ijiru says, eyes scanning over the hotel front. Doesn't really look like the pictures on Trivago, but I'm sure it's fine. Are you kidding me? Katsuki's eyes are practically saucers as he gestures towards the building. This place is one empty syringe away from being a crack house. See, too much time around Katsuki. Ijiru just shrugs. Oh please, I'm sure the inside is fine. He unbuckles his seatbelt, then steps out of the car. I'm gonna get us checked in. Be right back. We'll see, Denki mumbles under his breath. Katsuki's quick to lock the car doors as soon as Ijiru's gone. They watch as the redhead approaches the bar, pausing a moment to scan the building again, then disappears through the door. Denki leans up against Katsuki's seat. "We're not actually staying here, are we?" Katsuki's hands are white-knuckling the steering wheel, his gaze fixed on the front door. "It's probably not as bad as it looks," he says through gritted teeth. "I think I got hepatitis just from looking at it." "It's fine," Katsuki grits out, unblinking. "We just gotta trust 𝐲𝐬. Oh, believe me, I trust 𝐲𝐬. Denki flops back in his seat again. "I just don't trust his judgment. The guy's got shit taste. That must be why he's friends with you. At least, that's the reply Izuku expects to hear from Katsuki. Instead, the car is filled with silence, the latter uncharacteristically quiet, eyes never leaving the door, and Izuku wonders if he's ever actually seen Katsuki this worried before. Really, he's not sure if he's ever seen his not-friend exhibit emotions other than rage or indifference. Frankly, it's unsettling. Izuku feels his heart rate pick up, his palms sweat. He swallows past the lump in his throat. Time creeps by, but no one says a word. They watch the front door for signs of their friend, but no one goes in or out of the hotel. Katsuki's fingers tap rapidly on the steering wheel. Denki shifts uncomfortably in his seat. Izuku can't bring himself to move. In the end, it's Denki that breaks the silence. "Should someone go in after him? You volunteering?" Katsuki asks. "No, I was just saying, he's been in there for a while." Denki leans against the front seats, peering intently at the door. "He's probably fine." Izuku tries to reassure them, but it comes out as more of a question than a statement. "No shit," Katsuki replies. But even it lacks any real heat. Finally, the front door swings open and 𝐲𝐬 emerges, looking just the same as when he went in. The boys in the car release a collective sigh of relief, the tension in the atmosphere breaking as the redhead approaches. Katsuki unlocks the doors. "All right, we're all set," 𝐲𝐬 says when he opens the passenger door. "We have to go in through the bar, but there's a separate door that leads to a stairwell up to the rooms." That's not weird at all," Katsuki says, rolling his eyes. Still, he turns the car off, unbuckling his seatbelt and climbing out. The others follow suit. "Come on guys, don't think of this as weird," 𝐲𝐬 says as they all grab their duffel bags from the trunk. "Think of it as an adventure. It feels more like the start of a Criminal Minds episode," Denki says, slamming the trunk shut. "And not one of the ones where they save the victims in the end." They make their way into the bar, neon lights illuminating the smoke that hangs in the air. There aren't many patrons around at this time, just a young couple playing pool at the table in the corner and a burly-looking man seated at the bar. Izuku accidentally makes eye contact with him as they pass by and the man sneers, spitting onto the floor. Katsuki shoves Izuku forward, forcing him to break eye contact. They make it to the stairwell, ascending the steep, creaky steps quickly to put as much distance between themselves and the bar as possible, which isn't a lot, considering they're still right on top of it. But at least being up a level gives them a sense of security, no matter how slight. They reach the rooms soon after, located in a simple L-shaped hallway. 𝐲𝐬 pauses outside a couple of doors, holding up 2 keys. "Okay, so what's the game plan? Denki and Deku can take one room. We'll take the other," Katsuki decides, grabbing one of the keys from 𝐲𝐬. 𝐲𝐬 shrugs, handing the other key to Denki. "Is that okay with you too?" "All good with me," Denki says, accepting the key. Izuku nods as well. "I'm all right with it." Sure, he didn't know Denki that well, but it was better than trying to room with Katsuki, and 𝐲𝐬 seemed like a snorer. "Cool," 𝐲𝐬 says with a grin. "So we should get ourselves settled in. Then we can all hang out in one of our rooms for a while." "We just spent the entire day together," Katsuki points out, unlocking the door to their room. "Why would we spend even more time with each other?" "You don't have to if you don't want a man." 𝐲𝐬 shrugs. "I just figured it might be a nice time to bond." "You're insufferable," Katsuki says, disappearing into the room. 𝐲𝐬 ignores him. "So what do you say?" he asks Denki and Izuku. "We can probably order up some grub from the bar." "Sounds good, man." Denki unlocks their own door, pushing it open. "See what they got for wings." "You got it." 𝐲𝐬 finger guns before heading into his room. Izuku follows Denki into their room, the latter flicking on the light. The room is underwhelming. Thankfully, just 2 double beds, a couple of nightstands, a mini-fridge, a TV settled atop a table, and an adjoining bathroom. Everything looks outdated but clean. Maybe this place won't be so bad after all. Denki lets his bag fall to the carpet, then launches himself onto the closest bed. The mattress creaks under his weight, and Izuku swears he feels the floor dip slightly at the sudden movement. Maybe he spoke too soon. Denki wiggles on the bed, trying to find a comfortable position. Not great, but still not in the top 10 worst beds I've ever slept in, so I guess it's a win. Izuku sets his own bag next to the other bed, then gingerly sits down atop it. The mattress groans, and there's very little give to it. At least he can't feel the springs. Denki grabs the remote from one of the nightstands and turns on the TV before flipping through the channels. "Any preferences?" "Anything's fine." Izuku slides his phone from his pocket. The hotel doesn't have Wi-Fi, but thankfully there's a cafe nearby with an open network. He connects to it, then begins mindlessly scrolling through his feed. A little while later, there's a knock on the door. Denki opens it to find 𝐲𝐬, his arms laden with styrofoam containers. "Food's here. Come over to our room for a bit." They do, flipping off the lights and TV before heading over, being sure to lock the door behind them. They're just standard locks on the doorknob. No keycard lock, no security chain, no deadbolt, just a single lock in the knob, and 𝐲𝐬 tries not to think about it too much. 𝐲𝐬's got the food set up on the table at the front of the room, already stuffing his face full of potato wedges when the pair enters. He gestures towards the containers. "Help yourselves," he says before shoving another wedge into his mouth. "Don't mind if I do." Denki rubs his hands together before grabbing one of the chicken wing containers and flops onto one of the beds. 𝐀𝐦 emerges from the bathroom then, shirtless, a towel draped over his shoulders. "Don't lay on my bed, dumbass. You'll get sauce everywhere." "If a man has no sauce, then he is lost," Denki says sagely, but transfers himself to the other bed instead. 𝐲𝐬 sits on the simple dining chair next to the table, taking one of the wings from the remaining containers. 𝐀𝐦 rolls his eyes, then turns to 𝐲𝐬. "Come buzz me." 𝐲𝐬 nods, licking sauce off of his fingers. "You got it. But wash your hands first," 𝐀𝐦 says, face crinkling with disgust. "I don't want your greasy fingers in my hair." 𝐲𝐬 pretends to swipe his hands through 𝐀𝐦's hair. 𝐀𝐦 punches him in the gut. "Okay," 𝐲𝐬 wheezes, bent over at the waist. "I'm going." 𝐀𝐦 disappears from the doorframe, but through the open door 𝐲𝐬 can see 𝐲𝐬 at the sink, washing his hands. Denki's lounging on the bed, steadily working through the container of wings as he idly flips through TV channels. "Hey, he calls towards the bathroom. "You should give him cool designs this time, like hearts or my name." "Do it and die," comes 𝐀𝐦's reply. 𝐲𝐬 just laughs, drying his hands before grabbing for the electric razor set up on the countertop. "Don't worry, I won't." He winks at Denki. The buzzing of the razor starts up. 𝐲𝐬 grabs for another chicken wing. It's especially saucy, having been near the bottom of the container, and he tries to catch all the excess before it can drip onto his pants. He fails. There's a glob of sticky orangey sauce on his jeans. He sighs, holding the wing over the container with one hand while reaching for a napkin with the other, trying to blot away the mess. At least these are his dark denim. The razor stops. 𝐲𝐬 chuckles, but sounds uneasy. Oops. The fuck do you mean oops?" 𝐲𝐬 ignores him. "Hey Denks, wanna come check this out?" Denki tosses his freshly picked bone into the growing pile of chicken bones before leaping up from the bed and making his way over to the bathroom. 𝐲𝐬 wants to follow, but it looks much too crowded in there for him now. Denki hums. "You know, it's not so bad. I mean, if he just combs the long parts over like this." 𝐲𝐬, I swear to God, it's 𝐲𝐬 who breaks first, keeling over with the force of his laughter. Denki's soon to follow. "I'm sorry, man. Oh my God. 𝐲𝐬, what did you do?" "Nothing." 𝐲𝐬 manages between laughs. "I didn't mess up, I swear. We were just playing with you." "Seriously, man," Denki chimes in, wiping a tear from his eye. "It looks fine. I didn't do anything to you, unfortunately." The two boys are pushed back as 𝐀𝐦 makes his way towards the mirror to check the damage himself. Of course, as far as 𝐲𝐬 can tell, there isn't anything wrong with the undercut. No uneven or bald patches, no nicks, no unwanted designs, just a clean cut. 𝐀𝐦 shakes his head. "I hate you both so much right now." "Sure you do, man." 𝐲𝐬 claps him on the back. "Now brush all that stray hair off and come grab some food before Denki eats it all." "You better hurry," Denki adds, making his way back to the bed. Container 1 is almost done. 𝐲𝐬 joins Denki, while 𝐀𝐦 retreats further into the bathroom. The sound of the tub running can be heard briefly, followed by silence. Then, in a voice much more subdued than 𝐲𝐬 had ever heard from his not friend, 𝐀𝐦 calls, "𝐲𝐬, come look at this. If you're trying to get us back for tricking you, you're gonna have to try a lot harder than that, man." 𝐲𝐬 doesn't budge from his place on the bed. "Just, come see this." 𝐲𝐬 finishes off his wing, placing the bone on the pile before making his way over to the bathroom. "What's up?" Denki and 𝐲𝐬 follow. 𝐲𝐬 can't see past Denki or 𝐲𝐬, so he has to rely on what little narration the others may provide. "There," 𝐀𝐦 says, probably pointing. "Next to the toilet. You see that?" "What?" 𝐲𝐬 asks, leaning further in. "That." The subdued tone gives way to fury as 𝐀𝐦 hisses, "The motherfucking syringe, 𝐲𝐬." "Hey now, it's alright." 𝐲𝐬 tries to soothe him. "Maybe it was just for insulin or something." 𝐀𝐦 releases a long exhale through his nose. "We're going to die here, aren't we?" "It sure looks that way, doesn't it?" Denki says, half sitting on the counter now. "Sorry, cat," 𝐲𝐬 says, placing his hands on the other boy's shoulders and rubbing calmingly. "I know how badly you wanted to die in a massive bar fight in a gay club in Montreal." "Wait, you know about the Montreal thing?" 𝐲𝐬 asks, cocking his head at 𝐲𝐬. 𝐲𝐬 glances back over his shoulder at 𝐲𝐬. Of course. Who do you think is gonna start the fight? He winks. Denki claps his hands, sliding off of the counter. Alright, this has been fun, but I'm feeling claustrophobic and there are chicken wings calling my name. With that, he slides past Izuku out of the bathroom. Izuku follows shortly, staying just long enough to see Ijiru give Katsuki one last squeeze of his shoulders before dropping a towel on his head. The redhead leans in, says something too low for Izuku to hear, and Izuku decides it's time to leave, feeling too much like an intruder in that moment. He returns to his chair. The container of wings he had been picking through is gone. He sighs. Ijiru emerges from the bathroom a moment later. At his arrival, Denki asks, "Hey, now that you're done doing 𝐀𝐦 hair, can you do mine for me? You want me to buzz your hair?" Ijiru asks, surprised. Denki laughs. "God no. I just want you to brush it out and clip it back all nice and pretty." Ijiru shrugs, settling himself behind Denki on the bed. "I mean, I can. You're just a lot better at hair stuff than I am." Denki sighs dramatically. "Okay, you got me. I just really want my bro to platonically play with my hair. You should have just started with that," Ijiru declares, running his fingers through Denki's blonde locks. "You know I'm all about platonic hair playing." "What does that even mean?" Katsuki asks, exiting the bathroom. His hair is still damp, the long strands on top spiking out sporadically even without help from any product, with his undercut freshly buzzed. Izuku can't help but think that Katsuki looks sort of like one of those K-pop boys. Not that he'd point it out. Katsuki might not kill him for it. Would probably just point out that he's not Korean, but why take that risk? Denki taps the space on the bed in front of him. "Why don't you come find out?" "Pass." Katsuki grabs one of the containers, the Caesar salad one, still untouched, and a fork, then drapes himself across the empty bed. "You're lost, man." They lapse into a comfortable silence after that, the soft voices from the TV the only sound. Well, not counting the occasional shout from the bar below. A while later, it's Denki who breaks the silence, laying flat on his back, hair freshly combed and clipped, head lolled against Ijiru's thigh. "So I was thinking about the whole gas station gun guy thing." "Here we go," Katsuki groans, looking half asleep as he scrolls through his phone. "If this were a movie," Denki goes on, ignoring Katsuki, "that guy would probably be the assassin who's been hired to hunt us down." Ijiru's idly playing with a strand of Denki's hair, but pauses, crinkling his nose when he asks, "Why are we being hunted down?" "Early on in our trip, we would have accidentally done something that angered like a massive drug lord or something," Denki explains. "But we'd have no idea cause it'd be something really minor, like closing an elevator door at the wrong time or picking up a cool rock that's actually some important artifact. You've given this a lot of thought, haven't you?" Ijiru twists the boy's blonde hair between his fingers. "Of course," Denki declares. "And then we'd periodically see this guy following us. And at first we'd think nothing of it until he finally makes a move to kill us. At which point we'd evade him through a series of wacky hijinks and insane coincidences. And in the end, we'd actually help the cops catch the bad guys and bring down a massive crime ring." "Sounds like a shitty movie," Katsuki says, not looking away from his phone. Izuku is inclined to agree. Denki laughs, letting his eyes slide shut. "Oh, it definitely would be. Probably star Adam Sandler and his comedy crew." "Would I be played by Kevin James?" Ijiru sounds hopeful. Denki nods. "Yep, I'd be played by Kevin Hart. And Adam Sandler would play Izuku." "Who's playing me then?" Katsuki asks. "David Spade, probably." Katsuki's eyes narrow. "I don't want to be played by David Spade. Take it up with the casting directors, man," Denki replies, arching his neck back to look at Katsuki. When Katsuki doesn't reply, he settles back into his original position and continues. "Anyways, we'd all inexplicably have insanely hot wives that have no business being with us, and we'd treat them really poorly yet wonder why they're fed up with us all the time. But the audience will still feel like our wives are the problem." Ijiru snorts. "Man, this really is a shitty movie." "I know, right?" Denki shakes his head. "It definitely wouldn't pass the Bechdel test. But straight conservative white dudes would love it, so who cares? Hollywood in a nutshell," Katsuki mumbles. Izuku huffs a laugh before he can stop himself, and Katsuki glares at him. "Well, it's a good thing this is just a simple bro trip and not a Hollywood film," Ijiru points out, after giving Katsuki one of those really type looks. "We don't have to worry about bounty hunters or compulsory heterosexuality. We're just guys being dudes." "Gay," Katsuki says, the word distorted when he yawns partway through. "You're gay," Ijiru says, and Katsuki nods. And tired, he tacks on, placing his phone on the nightstand before rolling over onto his stomach and burying his face into the pillow. "So all y'all losers better get out of my room before I defenestrate you myself." His threat loses its potency when laden in sleep and muffled by white fabric. "We should probably all head to bed." Izuku agrees, rising from his chair. "We've got a full day of driving tomorrow, so we should leave early." "Okay, if we have to." Denki drags himself out of the bed. dramatically huffing and shuffling towards the door as though it were just the worst inconvenience to him. "Good night, guys. Hope you sleep well. Love you," 𝐲𝐬 calls after them as they exit the room. "Love you too, no homo," 𝗀𝐾𝐦 says, pausing in the doorway. "Nah man," 𝐲𝐬 says, winking. "Full homo." He blows the other boy a kiss. 𝗀𝐾𝐦 pretends to blush, gasping and daintily covering his mouth with his hand. "𝐲𝐬, you naughty boy. Not before marriage." A pillow goes soaring across the room, smacking into 𝗀𝐾𝐦 with surprising force as 𝐀𝐦 shrieks, "Get the fuck out of my room." Izuku has never fled a room so fast in his life. 𝐲𝐬's known for a while he isn't straight. Sure, he knew girls were attractive, and yes, he often fantasized about what he wanted to do with them, as pubescent boys do. But he soon found his eye drawn to guys in a way he's pretty sure his straight friends never did. Because 𝐲𝐬 also knew guys were attractive, and he often fantasized about what he wanted to do with them. So yeah, definitely not straight. He eventually discovered the term for it, bisexual, attracted to the same and other genders. He liked the word. It felt nice. It felt right. Yes, 𝐲𝐬's known for a while that he's bisexual. He's also known for a while that he could absolutely not, under any circumstances, let his family know, not while still dependent on them for survival, that is. Because you see, 𝐲𝐬's family doesn't like the word bisexual. They don't like any word under the queer umbrella. They think they are disgusting. They think they are wrong. And sure, 𝐲𝐬 knows his parents love him. He knows they'll support him through thick and thin, no matter where he ends up in life. He gets that. But when they've also mentioned on more than one occasion that they would never tolerate a gay kid in their household, well, can you really blame him for being cautious? So he's hidden that part of himself from his family, convincing himself it's not cowardice fueling his actions, but survival instinct. He can't support himself all alone just yet. He needs the stability they offer, the safety net. He can't give that up. Not yet. And yeah, it sucks having to lie to them, to mince his words, to dance around topics, to hear their hateful words directed at those closest to him, directed at him. And it hurts, God does it hurt. Not being able to do anything about it. Having to bear the hate silently, having to deny a part of himself. But he has to do it. If he wants to survive, he has to do it. But he's angry. He's terrified. He's alone. It's been getting better lately, 𝐲𝐬 has to admit. He changed schools in grade 10. Met Katsuki in homeroom. He was drawn to the other boy almost immediately. Part of it was physical attraction, probably. But there was something more to it. There was admiration, intrigue, maybe some envy. The guy carried himself with such a raw sense of self-assurance that 𝐲𝐬 couldn't help but take notice. And sure, Kat was an asshole at the best of times, but 𝐲𝐬 had long since learned how to take a hit. They became fast friends. Katsuki came out about a year later. 𝐲𝐬 stood by him the entire time. It amazed 𝐲𝐬 how Katsuki was able to embrace every aspect of himself, how he refused to hide, how he never put up with anyone's shit. 𝐲𝐬 had asked how his parents reacted, if they were okay with it. Katsuki had just shrugged. Like it or not, they've still got to deal with it. But Katsuki had always had his shit together. He started working part-time as soon as he was old enough, started a savings account soon after. He bought his own car, had started apartment shopping while still in high school. As soon as he graduated, he moved into his own place. He could take care of himself. He was smart like that. Not like 𝐲𝐬. Katsuki was the first person 𝐲𝐬 came out to. He'd been wanting to do it for the longest time, mulling over the idea in his mind, trying to figure out the perfect way to tell him. In the end, he admitted it over lunch while he and Katsuki had been sitting alone at a table on the greens. He'd had a plan, had a speech he'd been working on that whole week. But in the end, he'd just blurted it out, no lead up, no tact, just stated completely out of nowhere. And Katsuki's reaction? Well, it had been underwhelming. Cool, you gonna eat your fruit cup, or can I have it? At first, 𝐲𝐬 had been peeved by his friend's lack of a reaction. But after coming out to his other friends and experiencing the overwhelming onslaught of "thank you for trusting me with this and this doesn't change how I see you in the worst. I always thought you were a little gay." Kat's reaction had really been all he needed. Simple, straight to the point, acknowledging without under or overselling, accepting without fuss. Kat had made him feel normal, had proved that things really wouldn't change. To Katsuki, 𝐲𝐬 would always be 𝐲𝐬. And to 𝐲𝐬, Kat would always be Kat. 𝐲𝐬 always wondered what it was like to live like that, so comfortable, so confident, to live, to breathe, to be, so authentically, so unapologetically, yourself. He'd asked Katsuki before. The other boy seemed confused by the question. "It just is," he had replied. 𝐲𝐬 pretended he understood. 𝐲𝐬's parents hate Katsuki, but 𝐲𝐬 likes him. 𝐲𝐬 really likes him. But there's only so much he can do about it. He refuses to hide a relationship. Feels it's unfair to his partner, but he also can't be open about just any relationship, even if he wants nothing more than to throw caution to the wind. To announce his feelings to the world, to live and breathe and be, he can't. Not yet. That doesn't stop him from imagining it, from wanting it. The road trip has been an interesting experience for 𝐻𝐻𝐬. For once, he's not afraid to embrace his true self. He doesn't have to watch his words, avoid certain topics, check over his shoulder to make sure his family isn't listening. He can simply be surrounded by friends, by support, by love. It's nice, but it's also posed a different set of problems for 𝐻𝐻𝐬, blonde-haired, loud-mouthed, 𝐘𝐦-shaped problems. Look, 𝐻𝐻𝐬's no fool. Objectively, he knows his best friend is hot. He'd long since come to terms with his bro crush, or maybe he should just call it a crush at this point. But he also knows that recently, things have been different with 𝐘𝐦. 𝐻𝐻𝐬's always been a bit of a flirt, but where 𝐘𝐦 usually met him with annoyance, he now meets him in flustered embarrassment, or worse, reciprocation. And while 𝐻𝐻𝐬 can handle annoyance and finds embarrassment absolutely adorable, he hasn't figured out quite how to deal with reciprocation. 𝐻𝐻𝐬's poor bisexual heart can't take it, especially not when the object of his affections is always so close. Even now, occupying 2 separate double beds in this admittedly shitty hotel room, 𝐻𝐻𝐬 knows that if he just reaches out across the space between them, he'd have no difficulty finding 𝐘𝐦's hand. He wonders what it'd be like to do so. He has to physically restrain himself from trying. 𝐻𝐻𝐬 groans, rolling over in bed. Things would be so much easier if he could just be honest with his friend. If he could admit to everything, and finally act on his feelings, or at least receive the closure a rejection might bring him. But he can't. He's stuck, and it's driving him crazy. Stop moving around so much, comes a sleepy mumble from the second bed. You're so loud. Sorry man, the bed's really uncomfortable, 𝐻𝐻𝐬 whispers. It's not exactly a lie. The bed really is uncomfortable, but it's not the whole truth either. But Kat doesn't need to know that. 𝐘𝐦 mumbles something else, probably still half asleep, and 𝐻𝐻𝐬 doesn't catch it. What was that? The other boy groans, rolling onto his back. I said, he speaks much louder now. And the sudden change almost makes 𝐻𝐻𝐬 flinch. If you're so damn uncomfortable, just come sleep in my bed. 𝐻𝐻𝐬 bolts up in bed. Are you serious? Why wouldn't I be? 𝐻𝐻𝐬 can't really see his friend's expression in the darkness, but he's probably annoyed. It's not like we haven't done it before. Which is true, 𝐻𝐻𝐬 will acknowledge, but those situations had always been different. Team trips trying to fit too many people into one hotel room, or house party aftermaths where everyone was much too drunk to care about sleeping arrangements. But never when bed sharing was logistically unnecessary. 𝐻𝐻𝐬 must take too long to respond, for 𝐘𝐦's rolling over again and muttering, or not. Whatever, I don't care. No, that's not it at all, 𝐻𝐻𝐬 says, tossing the covers away. I was just surprised that Mr. I'm not sharing a bed with any of you losers actually invited me to share a bed with him. Do or don't, doesn't matter, 𝐘𝐦 says, still facing away. Just don't blame me if you're exhausted tomorrow. 𝐻𝐻𝐬 sees his window of opportunity closing quickly. He scrambles out of bed, nearly tripping over the sheets in his haste as he launches himself into bed next to 𝐘𝐦. At least, he intends to land next to 𝐘𝐦. In reality, he misjudges the distance, landing on top of the boy instead. What the fuck? Kat gasps out, crushed beneath 𝐻𝐻𝐬's larger form. Sorry, 𝐻𝐻𝐬 rolls off of his friend, falling softly against the mattress. I just got excited. Apparently, 𝐘𝐦 grumbles, rolling over to glare at the redhead. Shit, you probably broke my ribs or something. Without thinking, 𝐻𝐻𝐬 reaches out, smoothing his hand over 𝐘�Y's ribcage, feeling the ridges of the bones through the thin cotton of his t-shirt, ignoring the fact that he's assessing the wrong side. Kat stiffens under his touch, but doesn't move away. 𝐻𝐻𝐬 hums, letting his hand slide down to rest at the other's waist, ignoring the way his heart pounds away rapidly in his chest. Nope, no broken bones here. 𝐘𝐦 is unnaturally still next to him, his expression impossible to read in the darkness. But 𝐻𝐻𝐬 still tries, inching his body closer to 𝐘�Y's to get a better look. Even up close his face is blank, unreadable. Had he done something wrong? He gives the other's waist a slight squeeze. Hey, you alright? 𝐻𝐻𝐬. 𝐻𝐻𝐬 slides closer, propping himself up on his forearm so that he's more or less looking down at his friend. His thumb traces comforting circles into Kat's side. Yeah, 𝐘𝐦 swallows. 𝐻𝐻𝐬 notices the slight bob of his Adam's apple, even in the low light. So he's nervous too. The observation shouldn't be nearly as encouraging as it is. What? 𝐘�Y's voice breaks when he tries to speak. He takes a deep breath, eyes closing, then tries again. What are we doing? Like, in general, 𝐻𝐻𝐬 asks, a grin spreading on his face. Or right now, 'cause right now, we're just laying in bed. No, I mean, 𝐘𝐦 cuts himself off, groaning in what seems like frustration. Never mind, forget it. I'm done talking. No, hey, wait, 𝐘𝐦 tries to roll away, but 𝐻𝐻𝐬's hand on his waist stops him, pulling him back towards the redhead, pulling him in closer, if only slightly. Hey, you can talk to me. Whatever it is, you can tell me. I'll be serious, I promise. 𝐘𝐦 takes a moment to consider, jaw tensing and relaxing as he chews on his own words. His eyes narrow, maybe in concentration, maybe in frustration, as he searches for words. Why? He huffs. This is stupid. No, it's not. 𝐸 smooths his hand along Cat's side. He feels the way the latter's diaphragm expands and contracts with another deep, shaky breath. Take your time. It's all right. 𝐘𝐻𝐸 swallows again. And 𝐸 waits, not willing to push too far. 𝐘𝐻𝐸's never been good at feelings, especially talking about them. He's like a cornered animal at the best of times, angry, frightened, volatile. He can't just talk about his feelings. He has to drag them up from deep within his soul, grind them out between his teeth, spit them like blood. The words are there, on the tip of his tongue, trapped behind gritted teeth, fighting for release. But if he feels threatened, he closes up, shoves them down, locks them away. It's a tenuous process, but one 𝐸 likes to think he's figured out. Apparently, he still has a lot to learn. 𝐘𝐻𝐸 sighs, squeezing his eyes shut as he drags a hand along his face. Nothing. It's nothing. I'm tired. I'm gonna sleep. But 𝐸's never been one to give up so easily. Hey, he tries again, voice soft, soothing. He readjusts his weight, shifting to his elbow so that he can brush away the hand from 𝐘𝐻𝐸's face, pressing it against the pillow next to the other boy's head. He's not holding 𝐘𝐻𝐸's hand. Not really, just one palm lying flat over the other, but he could if he wanted to, could curl his fingers in, thread them between the others, and he wonders what would happen if he did. Would 𝐘𝐻𝐸 do the same? Experimentally, 𝐸 slides his hand from 𝐘𝐻𝐸's waist to cup his cheek, rubbing comforting circles into his skin with his thumb. Come on, it's all right. It's just me. 𝐘𝐻𝐸 exhales. It's short and shaky and burns hot against 𝐸's skin. They're so close now, close enough. 𝐸 realizes that if he wanted to, he could just lean in and 𝐘𝐻𝐸 cracks his eyes open. There's just enough light there, caught in a stray beam of a streetlight streaming in between the curtains, for 𝐸 to make out the colors embedded deep within dark irises. The crimsons, the russets, the golds. 𝐘𝐻𝐸 swears aren't there. It's just you, 𝐘𝐻𝐸 echoes, voice barely above a whisper. And there's emotion in those eyes now, a conflicting mix of fear and determination amongst the darkened hues. But there's something else too, something 𝐸 can't quite describe. He wants to know what it is. He needs to know. 𝐘𝐻𝐸 is close, so close. Had he leaned in? Or was 𝐸 the one moving? He feels a hand brush through his hair, fingers tangling loosely in the strands, sees eyes flicker down to his lips when he whispers, "Cat." Then their lips meet, just the slightest brush, barely there, but it's enough to send electricity jittering down his spine, to steal the breath from his lungs, to make him realize what the fuck is happening. He pulls back, heart hammering against his ribcage, hands retreating quickly as though burned by the heat of Cat's skin. Shit. 𝐘𝐻𝐸's eyes widen with panic, hands still hovering in midair. I'm sorry, You will be sorry, 𝐸 interrupts, voice low, if you don't kiss me again. 𝐸 barely registers the look of shock on 𝐘𝐻𝐸's face. He's moving too quickly to, leaning back in, pulling the other boy close again. His hands cup Cat's jaw, and in turn he feels hands loop around the back of his neck, fingers threading through his hair, before finally their lips collide in a bruising kiss. And it takes everything in 𝐸 not to pinch himself, to convince himself that this is really happening. This isn't a dream, and just enjoy it. He fixes the angle of the kiss, rolling himself further over the other boy, careful to support his weight on his elbows, tilting his head just right, lips sliding together more fluidly now, more naturally, as though it were all they'd ever been made for. Would 𝐘𝐻𝐸 kill him if he said something so stupid, so sappy, out loud? Probably. But it might be worth it to see the embarrassment on the other's face, to see the pink flush staining his cheeks. His distraction must be evident. 𝐸 feels a firm tug in his hair. And try as he might, he can't stop the moan that tears from his throat at the sensation. He jerks away, face flushing, gasping for air. Shit, that was weird, wasn't it? Shit. He can't see 𝐘𝐻𝐸's expression, doesn't want to see it. But he feels the hands in his hair loosen, feels fingertips rub soothingly over his scalp as Cat hums. Good to know. And before 𝐸 has a chance to respond to that, 𝐘𝐻𝐸's pulling him back down, one hand remaining tangled in his locks as he presses their lips together again, other hand sliding down to his collarbone, then back up his neck to his jaw, resting there. 𝐸 still feels the traces of electricity tingling along his skin from the contact, eyes sliding shut as he gives himself over to the pleasure, pressing himself impossibly closer to the other boy. His tongue teases the seams of 𝐘𝐻𝐸's lips, the other boy allowing him access with surprisingly little fight. In all his guilty late-night fantasies of his best friend, 𝐸 had always imagined 𝐘𝐻𝐸 to be rough, all teeth, all claws, a constant battle for dominance, a love like war. But this boy beneath him is nothing like that. He's soft, he's pliant, he's gentle, all things 𝐸 would never associate with his friend. But even absent of the combative nature 𝐸 had grown to love, There's something addictive about the way 𝐻𝐸 simply gives, about the soft slide of tongues, the caress of fingers, even the gentle scrape of teeth against his bottom lip that provides just enough of that violent passion. Forget fantasy, reality is so much better. He lets one hand drop from 𝐻𝐸's jaw, sliding down to toy with the bottom hem of his t-shirt before slipping his hand underneath, tracing his palm along the smooth planes of Kat's stomach. 𝐻𝐸 hums into the kiss, his own hands traveling down 𝐲𝐻𝐸's spine, slipping under the collar of his shirt, searing palms smoothing down his back before blunt nails scrape their way back up. And damn, there's no way 𝐻𝐸 can't tell how much 𝐲𝐻𝐸 likes that. 𝐲𝐻𝐸's quick to retaliate, hand sliding back down 𝐻𝐸's side to rest at his hip, teasingly toying with the waistband of his sweats, fingers dipping just beneath. 𝐻𝐸 jerks his head away, and 𝐲𝐻𝐸 freezes, eyes snapping open. But 𝐻𝐸 appears more amused than upset, a hand sliding up to cup the back of 𝐲𝐻𝐸's neck. "Hey, slow down," he says, breathless as he pulls 𝐲𝐻𝐸's head closer, pressing their foreheads together. "Not tonight." "Okay," 𝐲𝐻𝐸 says quickly, his voice sounding more like a wheeze. But then he's diving in again, capturing 𝐻𝐸's lips with his own. The kiss is gradually slow, lips languidly sliding together, breaths heaving through noses, neither daring break apart to breathe properly. 𝐲𝐻𝐸 lets his hand rest lightly against Kat's hip, thumb tracing gentle circles into the skin there, feeling every soft pull of the mouth against his own, reveling in the gentle ministrations of hands returning to his hair. He sighs into the kiss, eyes sealed shut, focused only on the feeling of the warm body pressed against him. Eventually, 𝐻𝐸 pulls away. 𝐲𝐻𝐸 wants to chase his lips, but he holds himself back, face hovering just above the other boy. 𝐻𝐸's eyes are hooded as he traces his thumb across 𝐲𝐻𝐸's cheek. "We should get some sleep," 𝐲𝐻𝐸 hums. Then, he leans in and leaves one last soft peck on the other boy's lips before rolling over onto his side. He uses his grip on 𝐻𝐸's hip to roll the blonde closer, facing one another. He leaves his arm draped across Kat's side, holding him in close as he nuzzles into the pillow, eyes falling shut. "Good night, Kat." He feels the soft brush of a hand through his hair. "Night, M." This time, sleep comes easily. The sun barely peeks over the horizon when 𝐲𝐻𝐸 wakes, pale dawn light spilling in through the cracks in the curtains and bathing the room in a dim glow. 𝐲𝐻𝐸 yawns, rolling over to grab his phone from the nightstand, checking the time. 7:18 a.m. When had Izuku wanted to leave again? 𝐲𝐻𝐸's pretty sure it was earlier than this. Oh well, a few more minutes of shut-eye couldn't hurt, right? 𝐲𝐻𝐸 sets his phone down on the nightstand, then rolls back over, nearly colliding with the sleeping body next to him. He startles, inhaling sharply as he jerks away from Kat, nearly tossing himself off of the bed in the process. "Shit," he mumbles, rubbing a hand over his collarbone, just above his racing heart. "Guess I'm awake now." 𝐻𝐸 stirs next to him, probably jostled awake from the redhead's sudden movements. His eyes scrunch up as though fighting consciousness, then finally crack open, settling drowsily upon 𝐲𝐻𝐸. The other boy seems to be taking his waking much more gracefully, a small smile tracing his lips when he meets 𝐲𝐻𝐸's gaze. "Hey." His voice is still rough with sleep. "Hey," 𝐲𝐻𝐸 echoes, hoping his breathlessness isn't evident. He's not even sure what's causing this loss of breath. The near heart attack he had just experienced, or the expression on 𝐻𝐸's face. The redhead can't recall a time he'd ever seen his best friend look so soft. Relaxed, sure. Calm, maybe. But soft. 𝐲𝐻𝐸 hadn't thought it possible. Maybe this is a dream. The thought doesn't hold much credibility considering his very real near-death experience just moments prior. But that doesn't stop him from entertaining the idea, from reaching out to brush a hand over the smooth skin of Kat's cheek, feeling a warmth beneath his fingertips that no dream could ever conjure up. 𝐻𝐸 sighs at the touch, eyes drifting shut. "Keep that up, and I'm gonna fall asleep again." 𝐲𝐻𝐸 snorts, withdrawing his hand. "Can't have that. We've got a lot of road to cover today, and we don't need your lazy ass slowing us down." "I'm the driver," 𝐻𝐸 says, face scrunching up in an exaggerated pout. "I set the schedule." "Is that so?" And 𝐲𝐻𝐸 wonders what would happen if he reached out, smoothed the lines of 𝐻𝐸's face with his fingertips. Would the other boy push him away? Or would he let him caress his skin, just like before? He's not really thinking when he lets his hand wander to 𝐻𝐸's cheek, thumb gentle smoothing the line between his brows. Kat's face relaxes and he hums, eyes cracking open to reveal just a sliver of red. "Yeah," he says, the corner of his mouth quirking upwards in just the barest hint of a smile as 𝐲𝐻𝐸's thumb traces across his cheekbones, along his jaw, "and according to my schedule, we've got a few minutes to spare." "We better make those minutes count," 𝐲𝐻𝐸 says, eyes mesmerized by the patterns his thumb draws across skin. He watches it slide beneath 𝐻𝐸's jaw, across his opposite cheek, before finally coming to rest along his bottom lip, tongue trailing along his own. 𝐀𝐦 hums, eyes follow the movement. Then there are fingers curling in 𝐬𝐻𝐬's hair, a hand cradling his cheek, arms drawing him closer until finally their lips connect, leaving the redhead breathless once again. The kiss is slow, lazy even, but even still it manages to send electricity skittering through 𝐬𝐻𝐬's veins, nerve endings alight with the touch of warm skin and slightly chapped lips. And distantly 𝐬𝐻𝐬 wonders if he could ever get used to kissing this boy. Would there ever come a time where 𝐀𝐦's touch didn't set his skin on fire? Didn't leave him breathless, didn't incite butterflies in his stomach, didn't send his heart racing, pounding within his chest? Honestly, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 hopes it never does. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 had thought about what dating Kat might be like. Of course he had. In those rare moments when he'd allow himself to entertain such a far-off fantasy. He had thought about holding the other boy's hand in public, taking him on romantic dates, calling him cheesy pet names like sweetie or darling, and watching his face flush with embarrassment. He'd protest a lot of it, of course, but secretly he'd love it, and he'd pretend to be upset when 𝐬𝐻𝐬 tried to comfort him with a quick peck on the cheek or the forehead, but they'd both know it's all for show. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 had never thought about kids, but they'd have a pet for sure, a dog, since Kat is, ironically, allergic to cats. 𝐀𝐦 would probably protest a dog at first too, but he'd soon fall in love with the rescue they bring home, their shared home. Because one day, they would move in together, a cute little acreage outside of the city, since 𝐀𝐦 always complained about the noise, and although their design styles clashed, they'd make it work. And they'd invite their family and friends over to celebrate. A beautiful party filled with nothing but joy and warmth and love. And now, lying tangled with 𝐀𝐦 in this shitty hotel bed, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 realizes that those fantasies could become reality. But, they couldn't. He couldn't. It just wasn't possible yet. 𝐀𝐦 must sense his distraction, pulling away from the kiss and gazing at 𝐬𝐻𝐬, brows furrowed as his thumbs stroke along the blonde's cheeks. What's wrong? Nothing. Nothing's wrong, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 says with a smile, trying to be convincing. Because really, nothing is wrong. In fact, everything is right, so right, and 𝐬𝐻𝐬 wishes he could just enjoy it. But there's something there that's still holding him back, something that even 700 kilometers can't fix. But he can't tell Kat any of this, won't tell Kat this. Instead, he tries to cover up his hesitance. I'm just still processing all this. I mean, I'm still not convinced last night wasn't a dream, you know. 𝐀𝐦's expression sharpens, a smirk splitting his lips. Then I guess I just gotta convince ya. And then the kiss resumes, slow, soft, sensual. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 lets his eyes slide shut, lets 𝐀𝐦 maneuver them until the redhead's back rests against the bedspread, one hand tangled in his hair, the other grasping for his hand, intertwining their fingers. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 practically melts into the gentle touches, sighing into the kiss as he allows his free hand to trace along 𝐀𝐦's shoulders up to the back of his neck, freshly buzzed hair scratching pleasantly beneath his fingers. Before long, they break apart for air, foreheads resting against one another, breaths intermingling. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 keeps his eyes closed, his mind only tuned into the warmth of the body pressed against him. I don't know. I think you're gonna have to do better than that. 𝐀𝐦 laughs, a sharp exhale that tickles against 𝐬𝐻𝐬's skin. You're such a dumbass, he says, before leaning in to place a chaste peck against the redhead's lips. Yet somehow I still love you. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 reacts before he can even think. He's up off the bed, scrambling to free himself from the tangled sheets as he tries to put some distance between himself and the other boy. 𝐀𝐦 is sprawled on his back on the other side of the bed, where 𝐬𝐻𝐬 had practically tossed him in an effort to escape, most likely, eyes narrowed in an expression somewhere between confusion and rage. What the fuck? We should. It's probably time to get going. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 interrupts, stuttering over his words as he finally frees himself, backing away from 𝐀𝐦 as one might a rabid animal. It's already later, and we were probably supposed to be out of here sooner. Who knows how far behind schedule we are? 𝐬𝐻𝐬 feels his back hit the wall. I should go check on Izuku and Denki, make sure they're ready to go. He turns, quickly locating the door and, after fumbling with the lock, pulls it open. So yeah, I'm just gonna go. He almost runs into the door in his haste to escape, but he can't bring himself to feel embarrassed by it. It's a small price to pay to get out of that room, to avoid seeing whatever expression eventually settles on 𝐀𝐦's features. God, why did 𝐬𝐻𝐬 have to be so stupid? What was he thinking? He practically throws himself against the door to Denki and Izuku's room, rapidly smacking his hand against the wood to get their attention, not caring about the noise. Really, what are the chances this place had other people in it, anyway? The door swings open, and 𝐬𝐻𝐬 slips himself inside, chest heaving as he tries to get air back into his lungs. His heart slams against the wall of his ribcage, threatening to burst free with every beat, and surely the others must hear it. How could they not? Denki closes the door slowly, as though confused or unsure, while Izuku has paused halfway through zipping up his duffel bag. They assess him with wide eyes. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 does his best to flash a smile. Morning. How are you two feeling today? We're good, Denki says, cautiously approaching the redhead. Are you okay? No, yeah, man, I'm fine, I'm great. Neither of the boys seems to believe him. 𝐻𝐸 can't blame them. He doesn't even believe himself. Just excited to hit the road again. Life is a highway, after all. So hit the road, Jack. I just can't wait to get on the road again. 𝗀𝐻𝐸 walks up behind 𝐻𝐸 and places his hands on his shoulders, massaging them gently. Hey, I say this with the utmost love and respect, but you need to shut the fuck up and chill the fuck out. Okay, 𝐻𝐸 nods, doing his best to regulate his breathing, smell the flowers, blow out the candles, as 𝗀𝐻𝐸 continues his gentle massage. 𝐬𝐸 finishes his packing, giving the room a last once-over, seemingly trying to avoid getting involved in 𝐻𝐸's, for lack of a better term, mental breakdown. And really, 𝐻𝐸 can't blame the guy. It's not like he and 𝐬𝐸 really know each other. This situation must be horribly uncomfortable for him. Hell, this situation is horribly uncomfortable for 𝐻𝐸. It isn't fair to put the guy through all this, not when he had planned a fun road trip for them all. 𝐻𝐸 needs to get his shit together, for 𝐬𝐸's sake. So he takes a final deep breath, releasing it slowly before nodding. Okay, I'm good now. I'm chill. Good. 𝗀𝐻𝐸 gives his shoulders a final squeeze before backing away. Now, care to explain what all that was about? But before 𝐻𝐸 can answer, the door to the room swings open, revealing a very pissed-off 𝐀𝐦. He forcefully tosses one of the duffel bags he's carrying. 𝐻𝐸's, the redhead notes, into the room before snarling, "Hurry up, we're leaving." With that, he turns on his heel and stomps down the hall, old floorboards creaking and groaning under his heavy footsteps. All eyes are on 𝐻𝐸 as 𝗀𝐻𝐸 begins to ask, "𝐻𝐸, so I may have fucked up a little?" 𝐻𝐸 interrupts, chuckling humorlessly. "What do you mean by now?" It's 𝐀𝐻𝐸's enraged shout that cuts 𝗀𝐻𝐸 off, booming voice practically rattling the doors in their frames, and poor 𝐬𝐸 looks close to wetting himself from fear. 𝐻𝐸 quickly snatches up his duffel bag, avoiding all eye contact. I should get dressed before he gives himself an aneurysm. Before the others can reply, 𝐻𝐸 retreats into the small bathroom, shutting and locking the door behind him. He pauses a moment there, back pressed against the door, head thudding back against the wood as he closes his eyes, taking a deep breath. This is going to be a long day. Most people assume that 𝐬𝐸, being both asexual and something of a nerd, has a difficult time reading social cues and understanding social situations. It's as though they think his lack of sexual attraction somehow extends to his full range of emotion and prohibits him from experiencing literally any feeling, regardless of its nature. But it's far from an accurate assumption. 𝐬𝐸, in fact, is very good at reading people. He's smart, he's observant, he's unassuming and able to slip in and out of a variety of social situations without fuss. Besides, having grown up in a world where asexuality was rarely recognized, let alone discussed, 𝐬𝐸 had to spend a long time carefully considering both his own and others' emotions. How else was he supposed to realize that his own experience with sexuality was so different than most other people's? So yeah, 𝐬𝐸 is good at reading a room. And even if he wasn't, he's still confident that he could tell with no lack of certainty just how painfully tense this situation is. 𝐬𝐸 is tucked in the back seat of the car, 𝗀𝐻𝐸 to his left. 𝐀𝐦 is in the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel with a vice-like grip, narrowed eyes fixed on the road ahead, while 𝐻𝐸 occupies the passenger seat, shoulders stiff and pointedly keeping his gaze to the side window, watching the scenery as it zips by. No one speaks. The only sound is that of the tires on the pavement, the wind against the frame. 𝗀𝐻𝐸 had tried asking 𝐀𝐦 to turn some music on, but 𝗀𝐸 vehemently refused. No one dared try again after that. They're a little less than half an hour into their drive when 𝗀𝐻𝐸 finally breaks, unable to stand the pressing silence. He heaves a loud sigh, drawing the attention of the car's occupants. "So, airline food, am I right?" No one in the front seat replies, gazes returning to their original positions. 𝗀𝐻𝐸's shoulders slump, and 𝐬𝐸 can't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for the boy. Whatever is going on between 𝗀𝐸 and 𝐻𝐸 is obviously affecting 𝗀𝐻𝐸 too. And it's not fair that 𝗀𝐻𝐸 has to suffer the burden of their strife. Seriously, how could the two be so callous towards their friend? How could they just toss him away as soon as things went south? 𝐬𝐸 can't stomach it. He feels a familiar spiral of rage rising in his core, a heat that spreads through his veins with every rapid beat of his heart, but he doesn't let it get to him. He takes a deep breath, forcing his hands to relax from their fisted position. Getting angry with 𝗀𝐸 and 𝐻𝐸 wasn't going to help. It'd probably just make things much worse. So he swallows his anger, pushes it back deep within himself, and turns to 𝗀𝐻𝐸. "I've never been on a plane." 𝐬𝐸 ignores the glare directed at him in the rear view. "They freak me out." "Really?" 𝗀𝐻𝐸 seems to perk up at this, straightening in his seat as he looks over at 𝐬𝐸. "Is it the whole flying 𝗀𝐻𝐸 vibe that gets you?" 𝐬𝐸 shakes his head. "No, I'm more concerned about a snakes on a plane situation. Or I have this irrational fear that something will happen to the pilot and then everyone's gonna have to rely on me to land the plane. You don't know how many hours I've spent researching plane landing. At one point, I even considered applying to flight school. Denki snorts. Man, that is one interesting brain you got yourself. Izuku honestly doesn't know how to take that, but he thinks it's a compliment. Thanks. Suddenly Denki's leaning towards Izuku, expression somber, golden eyes burning with a new intensity. Okay, but what happens if a passenger collapses on the plane, and the flight attendants call for a doctor? Does that role fall to you too? Izuku cuts himself off, taking a moment to actually consider the question. Really, what were the chances a doctor would be on board every time Izuku were on a plane? And Izuku did take first aid training a couple of years ago, so people would turn to him for medical guidance, wouldn't they? But what if the patient's condition is something that his first aid didn't cover? What if he's expected to perform a tracheotomy with nothing but a razor blade and a ballpoint pen? What if no one has a pen? Oh my god, Izuku groans, burying his head in his hands. I need to go to medical school. Denki laughs, and Izuku feels a hand rub comforting circles on his back. It sure seems that way, man. Would you cut it out? Katsuki more so demands than asks, and Izuku lifts his head to see him glaring into the rear view. You're gonna give him anxiety. I think it's too late for that, 𝐲𝐬 points out with a laugh, gaze still fixed out the window. Katsuki's glare shifts. Who asked you? The hand on Izuku's back stops, Denki's body tensing next to him. But before either boy can interject, 𝐲𝐬 replies, chill, man. We're just messing around. Oh, is that all it was? Just messing around? Katsuki asks, and something about his tone makes Izuku think he isn't just talking about the previous conversation. 𝐲𝐬 must come to the same conclusion. Wait, but Katsuki, in fact, does not wait. How do you think Deku feels? Do you think he sees it as just messing around? 𝐲𝐬 scoffs, and Izuku knows this isn't going to end well for anyone. Right, and since when did you start caring about how Izuku feels? Well, sorry for not wanting you to fucking harass the guy. That's real fucking rich coming from you. What's that supposed to mean? Denki retracts his hand, slowly curling in on himself, and the sight actually makes Izuku nauseous. Can't Katsuki and 𝐲𝐬 see what they're doing to their friend? And more importantly, why can't Izuku make his useless mouth work to try and stop it? 𝐲𝐬's twisted in his seat towards Katsuki now, eyes darkened with anger in a way that Izuku never thought the blonde capable. You know exactly what I mean. He gestures towards Izuku, eyes not leaving Katsuki. You harass the guy all the time. Hell, I don't think you've actually been nice to him even once this entire trip. That's different. How is it different? Because he knows me. Katsuki's eyes flicker briefly to Izuku's before returning to 𝐲𝐬. But 𝐲𝐬 looks away. And I don't. That's not what I have to pee, Denki announces, practically launching himself into the space between the two front seats, attempting to form somewhat of a barrier between the two quarreling boys, from the looks of it. Are you kidding me? Katsuki mumbles, gaze returning to the road. We left like barely an hour ago. Yeah, but we were in a bit of a rush, as you may recall, Denki says with a laugh, and I may have forgotten to go, so. Before Katsuki can reply with what would certainly be a string of profanities, Izuku speaks up, leaning forward to join Denki. I also have to go. Of course you do. Please. Izuku tries to get Katsuki to meet his gaze, to understand that this was definitely not about needing a washroom. And eventually the other boy's eyes do shift over to his own, even if only briefly. It must be enough for Katsuki's eyes. Fine, we're a few minutes out of the next town. Can you survive until then? Yes, sir, Denki says with a mock salute. Grinning broadly as he drops back against his seat, Izuku tries to match the other's attitude with a smile and nod of his own, returning to his seat as well. Maybe things weren't as bad as they seemed. Maybe Katsuki and 𝐲𝐬 just did this sometimes, and it wasn't anything to worry about. It'd all blow over in the end, and things would return to normal. But still, Izuku glances at Denki out of the corner of his eye. He's got a smile on his face still as he taps out an idle rhythm on his thighs. It's a front meant to exude ease, maybe boredom, but Izuku can't help but read discomfort in his poise, in the hard lines of his posture, in the jerky twitches of his hands. His expression is pinched slightly. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. Izuku sighs, shifting his gaze out the window as the tense silence returns. Things weren't okay, that much he's sure of, but he's yet to figure out whether or not it's his place to intervene. At this point, he can only hope that the three can get through it themselves. Overstepping would only make things worse. They pull into a small gas station a few minutes later. Denki jumps out of the car as soon as it comes to a stop, racing inside to find a washroom, and 𝐲𝐬 follows soon after. Izuku pauses a moment, gaze turning towards Katsuki who had yet to move, hands still gripping the wheel much too tightly, eyes narrowed. He doesn't seem okay, seems much too wound up for it being so early in the day, and it sends something like nausea coiling in Izuku's gut. Kakin, what? The other boy grinds out, unmoving. Well, maybe not completely unmoving. If anything, Katsuki tensed up even more. Izuku sighs. Right, he's the last person Katsuki would ever confide in. Nothing. He unbuckles his seatbelt and opens the door, pausing halfway through. Want me to grab you something? Izuku sees the way Katsuki's jaw clenches and unclenches before the other boy's eyes slip shut, and he takes a deep breath. No, just hurry up. Izuku nods, then finally climbs out of the car, closing the door gently behind him before proceeding inside the gas station. 𝐲𝐬's at the front counter, paying for an assortment of bottled beverages and overprocessed snack food. He's grinning and making polite small talk with the cashier, but it appears forced, smile more like a grimace, eyes flickering every so often out the front window, towards the car, Izuku thinks, but he can't be certain at this angle. He heads over to the washrooms at the rear of the building, finally feeling his body relax once the door swings shut behind him. Maybe it'd be better if he couldn't read social situations, could simply bask in the bliss that such ignorance would bring. But even if he did happen to have the emotional intelligence of a wet paper towel, Izuku is certain he would still be able to read the tension in the air. Denki's just drying his hands, looking up when Izuku enters. Hey dude, get lost on the way here. Lost in thought, I guess. Izuku shrugs. Hey, are you, like, okay? Denki tosses his used paper towels into the trash. Yeah, no, yeah, I'm good. Just a little annoyed, but it's chill. He grins and shrugs as if to prove it's all no big deal. And the action is almost believable. Almost. But if Denki doesn't want to press the subject, neither will Izuku. Good. That's good. Well, I'm gonna go snag some snacks and head out, Denki says, heading towards the door. He claps Izuku on the shoulder as he passes. See you in a bit. Have fun. Then he's gone, door swinging shut behind him. Izuku cocks his head. Have fun. Odd thing to say to someone in the bathroom. Izuku finishes up his business, taking a little longer than necessary to wash and dry his hands before heading out. He's not procrastinating his eventual return to the car, of course, he's just certain the others might need a bit more time to cool down. So Izuku heads to the drink coolers in the back, grabbing a couple bottles of the iced tea he knows Katsuki loves and bringing them up to the counter to pay before finally making his way out to the car. 𝐲𝐬's leaning up against the edge of the car, gaze focused on his phone, bag of snacks resting on the roof. Denki's wandering around the lot, pulling a few stretches as he makes his way across the pavement. Katsuki hasn't moved from his spot in the driver's seat. 𝐲𝐬 glances up from his phone as Izuku approaches, a small smile forming on his face. Hey man, ready to go? Izuku nods. Sorry for making you guys wait. Don't worry about it, 𝐲𝐬 says with a shrug, slipping his phone into his pocket before grabbing his bag. I think we all needed the breather. They climb into the car, 𝐲𝐬 calling to Denki before swinging his door shut. Izuku sets one of the iced teas in his cup holder before passing the other up to Katsuki. They had a 2-for-1 deal. Katsuki glares at the proffered iced tea, then sighs, accepting it from Izuku. Whatever. 𝐲𝐬 looks like he's about to say something that would undoubtedly set Katsuki off again. But thankfully Denki interrupts, practically ripping open the car door and launching himself into the backseat. Guys, we gotta go. What did you do this time? Katsuki asks, starting the car up. Hey, it might not have been me, Denki says, twisting around in his seat to glance out the back window. It could have been any one of us. I'm not even going to pretend to know what's going on, 𝐲𝐬 says, rummaging around in his plastic bag before pulling out a pre-packaged muffin. Denki whips around in his seat again, hands gripping the leather. Okay, don't freak out, but I think we're being followed. The fuck you mean we're being followed? Katsuki asks, glaring at Denki in the rear view. You remember the gas station gun guy? The one who's supposed to be like a hired assassin or something? 𝐲𝐬 asks around a mouthful of muffin. Denki wrinkles his nose. Ew, but yes, that gas station gun guy. What about him? Katsuki asks, temper rising by the second. He's here, Denki hisses, glancing back over his shoulder. Look, he just pulled into the pumps. Izuku follows his gaze. And sure enough, there's a lifted white pickup parked next to the gas pumps, a pot-bellied man climbing out from the driver's seat. He does look strikingly like the man they had seen at the other gas station. But there's no way it was him, right? Katsuki seems to share the same sentiment. It's probably someone else. I mean, he looks like every other white dude with a beer belly that you'd find at a gas station. But the truck, Denki protests, but Katsuki cuts him off. Newsflash, dumbass, lots of people drive white trucks, but lifted white trucks. We're in Montana. Denki strains against the back seat, trying to get a closer look. And with smokestacks. We're in Montana, Katsuki repeats. And even if it is the same guy, he's probably not following us. I mean, we're taking I-90, not some shitty back road. Lots of people travel this route. Denki twists back around in his seat, crossing his arms over his chest. Still seems suspicious to me. You think everything is suspicious, though, 𝐲𝐬 says, muffin now finished. You watch way too many conspiracy theory videos. Those videos are onto something, okay. But that's not the point. Denki takes a calming breath. There's something weird going on here. Then he's turning to Izuku, who is currently working on his best impression of a leather seat. Apparently, he needs a lot more practice. You agree with me, right, Zuko? Izuku fiddles with the loose corner of his iced tea bottle label. I don't know, Denki. It really just seems like a coincidence to me. Denki's lip juts out in a pout, and he slumps against his seat with a huff. Y'all are just cynics, but whatever. If you want to get assassinated by some Dog the Bounty Hunter knockoff, that's on you. No one's getting assassinated. Not on my watch, 𝐲𝐬 declares, puffing out his chest. I've seen those Bass Rutten self-defense videos on YouTube. I've got us covered, no problem. Denki scoffs. That means nothing. I've seen Dragon Ball Z, but that doesn't mean I can shoot lasers out of my hands. Well, technically they weren't lasers, Izuku starts to point out, but Katsuki cuts him off. You watch anime. Fucking weeaboo piece of shit. He says it with a condescending laugh, but Izuku isn't sure if the insult was intended to be humorous or not. Oh, says the guy who watched every episode of Naruto Shippuden, including the filler. Denki fires back, head snaking side to side. It was for the world building, guys. 𝐲𝐬 interrupts, glancing between the two bickering boys. We get it, you're both geeks. It's chill, seriously. But we should really hit the road instead of arguing in the parking lot of a fucking. He glances at the storefront, eyes squinting. Grub and go. Katsuki shoots a glare at the redhead, but still shifts the car into reverse, pulling out of the spot as he mumbles, Don't tell me what to do. 𝐲𝐬 tenses, looking like he's about to respond, and not in kind, but he seems to gain control of his tongue before he does. Instead, he takes a deep breath, then turns his attention back to his snacks. Can I at least play some music this time? Denki asks, and when Katsuki doesn't acknowledge him, 𝐲𝐬 passes the aux cord to Denki. He accepts it with a triumphant grin, plugging his phone in and picking a playlist. Now then, let's get this party started. Lunch is an underwhelming affair. Just a quick trip through a drive-thru after all occupants swear on Freddie Mercury's fucking grave that they don't need a washroom break. Izuku covers everyone's meal for ease of ordering, with the precursor discussion arising from the initial offer taking longer than the trip through the drive-thru. Still, Izuku doesn't miss the way Denki and 𝐲𝐬 both carefully order from the value menu, a sweet, almost self-sacrificial action considering the massive appetites of both boys. But the warmth in his chest that arises at such a simple gesture is soon replaced with an unsettling chill when he realizes Katsuki has only ordered a coffee for himself. I'm not hungry, he responds to the three worried gazes directed his way. Fuck off. I'll eat later. 𝐲𝐬 doesn't seem to believe him, but he says nothing about it, simply stuffing another handful of oversalted fries into his mouth. They hit the road again, the GPS calling out directions in its robotically feminine voice. Katsuki does as directed, ignoring the idle conversation as he takes an exit onto some small two-lane highway. But, wait, shouldn't they stay on the interstate? Denki points this out before Izuku gets the chance. Hey man, I don't think this is the right way. If it weren't the right way, Katsuki says between gritted teeth, the GPS wouldn't have said to go this way. Yeah, but it's probably a faster route. Katsuki dismisses before Denki can protest further. 𝐲𝐬 squints at the other boy. Faster than the interstate. Fuck off, Katsuki hisses, probably unable to come up with an actual response. 𝐲𝐬 turns halfway around in his seat, reaching out a hand towards Izuku. Hey Zuko, you got that map of yours still? We don't need his map. But Katsuki's protests go unacknowledged, Izuku wordlessly slipping the paper map from the seat pocket and handing it to 𝐲𝐬. 𝐲𝐬 rights himself in his seat again, studying the map. Yeah, looks like we were supposed to stay on I-90 until he's interrupted when Katsuki's arm shoots out, yanking the paper from his hands and quickly crumpling it into a ball before discarding it behind his seat at Denki's feet. I said we don't need his shitty fucking map. Now everyone shut up and let me drive. Fine, whatever, do what you want. 𝐲𝐬 leans his elbow against the door, then his cheek against his hand, gaze fixed out the window. I'm not arguing with you anymore. Good. Katsuki cranks the volume dial on the stereo, filling the car with music and effectively limiting the possibility for future conversation. Denki leans down in his seat, gingerly picking up the crumpled ball and attempting to smooth it out before silently handing it over to Izuku. Izuku mouths a quick thanks, not willing to risk setting Katsuki off again, and Denki replies with a strained smile before turning his attention out the window. Izuku heaves a sigh, the sound swallowed by the music. The situation may have settled for now, but it's still far from resolved. A ticking time bomb, paused but not diffused, still volatile and waiting to blow. Anything could set tensions alight, start the reaction that leads to detonation. Izuku can only hope that they'll survive the inevitable explosion. As day turns to night, and Montana to Idaho, Izuku can't help but fear that they've gotten themselves completely, utterly, hopelessly lost. No, scratch that, Katsuki has gotten them lost. If only the temperamental boy would just admit it. No, we're going the right way. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 insists for the billionth time that hour, hands gripping the wheel as he stubbornly maintains his course. Then why aren't we in Nevada yet? Huh. 𝐸 challenges, arms crossed over his chest. Who says we aren't? It's not like you can see shit very well in the dark. I can see well enough to know we haven't crossed into Nevada. They've been at it for a good half hour by now, aimlessly bickering back and forth. It's mostly harmless, Izuku thinks, something akin to an old married couple, but it's still tiring to listen to for so long. And considering the tension still underlying every petty remark, Izuku fears things can only get worse. Denki stuffed his earbuds into his ears long ago, drowning out the clamor. Izuku wishes he could do the same. Look, 𝐸 says, face pressed against the glass of the window. That sign says something about Idaho, not Nevada. Well, what the fuck am I supposed to do about it? Huh. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 spits back. We'll get there when we get there. But we're never going to get there. 𝐸 turns back to 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬. That's what I'm trying to tell you. But you're not listening. No, cause I'm listening to the GPS. The GPS doesn't know shit. You don't know shit. 𝐸 rubs at his temples. Oh my god, just stop so we can try and figure out where the hell we are. No, I know what I'm doing, so just fuck off. No, you don't know what you're doing. You're just too much of a coward to admit it. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 sputters. Oh, so I'm the coward? Huh. What about that shit you pulled this morning, running away like that? Was that not fucking cowardly, 𝐸? I didn't run away. Then what do you call that shit? No, 𝐸 says, shaking his head. No, we're not talking about this now. Right now, we just need to get to Reno. That's it. And that's what I'm doing. I'm getting us to Reno. You're getting us lost. No, I'm not. Then where are we? I don't know. Exactly. Fuck you. No, fuck you. Fuck both of you. Denki interjects, yanking his earbuds out. Seriously, just shut the fuck up for 5 seconds. We'll just stop in the next town, hope it's got a motel, and spend the night. Then, when we're all nice and chill again, we can figure this out. Yeah, fuck off. No one needs to hear your dumbass opinions, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 spits, glaring at the other boy in the rear view. But before Denki can reply, 𝐸 snaps back. Are you fucking kidding me right now? Why do you always have to be such an asshole to Denki? What the fuck did he ever do to you? That's none of your fucking business. Well, I'm making it my business. I mean, come on man. 𝐸 runs a hand through his hair. You always treat the people around you like shit. And for what? Cause you think you're better than them. Newsflash, asshole, the best don't need to tear down those around them to be the best. They're the best because they elevate others. And you know what, cat? You really aren't shit. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's hands tighten imperceptibly on the wheel. You don't know a damn thing about me. But I do, 𝐸 insists. Whether you like it or not, I know you. And I know that you're better than whatever the fuck this is. But your head's probably too far up your damn ass to figure that out. Shut the fuck up. No, you shut the fuck up. Look, I know you're upset with me, but this isn't the way to deal with it. Well, how the hell else am I supposed to deal with it? You refuse to talk about it. 𝐸 laughs. Oh, is that what you've been trying to do? Talk. Cause all I've heard is your fucking yelling. That's it. Izuku doesn't have time to brace himself before the car comes to a screeching stop, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 harshly jerking it over to the shoulder of the highway. He slams it into park before practically smashing his hand against the unlock button. For a moment, the sound of harsh breathing fills the car. Izuku knows it can't be his own. He's been holding his breath since the car stopped. Denki glances around in confusion, the tinny sound of his music still flowing out of the tiny speaker of his earbuds. What's going on? 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 releases a long, shaky breath. Get out. 𝐸's head whips towards him. What? I said. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 spits, gaze ever fixed forward. Get the fuck out of my car. 𝐸's mouth gapes, and in any other moment it might be comical, but Izuku's head is spinning far too quickly to really appreciate it. Denki leans forward against the driver's seat. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬, dude, what are you? Can it? Dumbass. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 interrupts, shooting a sharp glare over his shoulder at the other boy. I'm not talking to you, cat. 𝐸 finally manages, once he can get his mouth to work again. What do you? And for perhaps the first time that evening, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's gaze turns to 𝐸. Oh, did I fucking stutter? He asks with a sneer. Get out of my car. 𝐸 blanks. You can't just kick me out. And something in 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 snaps, for soon he's practically launching himself at 𝐸, forcefully unbuckling the other boy's seatbelt and pushing him towards the door, all the while growling, get out, get out, get out. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬, what the hell? Denki protests, trying to wrangle the other boy back into his seat. Okay, I'm going, 𝐸 says, placating, wrenching open his door and nearly tumbling over himself in his haste to escape the car. Fuck, I'm out, okay. Kaken, please, Izuku speaks up, as though there were actually something he could do to help the situation. And as though finally reminded of his presence, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's glare snaps to Izuku, and Izuku flinches under the force of that gaze. Sure, Izuku was used to seeing his not friend angry before, but never like this. Maybe it's really just a trick of the light. but 𝐀𝐦's face is much too sharp, too harsh, his eyes too shiny. "Izuku, you idiot," he thinks to himself, gulping as he watches 𝐀𝐦's jaw clench and unclench, no doubt preparing to maim Izuku with his words. "You're probably the last person who could ever calm Kaken down. What were you thinking?" But he knows exactly what he was thinking. That he couldn't just watch his friends tear each other apart, especially when it was his fault they were there in the first place. He had to do something, no matter how hopeless the situation. So he steels himself, awaiting the inevitable explosion. Then 𝐀𝐦 takes a deep breath, shoulders slumping and expression slipping back into something more neutral. His voice is oddly subdued when he says, "You." Front seat. 𝐈𝐻𝐻. 𝐀𝐦's gaze shifts towards the passenger side, where 𝐈𝐻𝐻 still stands just outside of the car. "Get in the back." With that, 𝐀𝐦 rights himself in his seat once again. It takes a moment for Izuku to register the words, and a moment longer to understand them. Then he's quick to comply, wordlessly unbuckling his seatbelt and clambering out of the car. He pauses next to 𝐈𝐻𝐻, the redhead's arms wrapped around himself like some sort of self-hug. 𝐈𝐻𝐻 just shakes his head, the limited light highlighting the glittering tear tracks marking his cheeks as he passes by, making to climb into the back seat of the car. Nausea coils in Izuku's gut, but he ignores it as he too climbs back into the car, pulling the door closed as gently as possible and buckling in. 𝐀𝐦 barely acknowledges his presence, eyes closed when he asks, "You still got that map?" "Yeah." Izuku shifts so he can pull the folded paper map from his pocket. He'd done his best to smooth it out, but the paper's still crumpled up slightly. 𝐀𝐦's eyes open, gaze flickering briefly to the map before turning to look out the windshield. Then he's reaching out, unplugging the GPS with a little more force than necessary. "How do we get to Reno?" It's a question, but the exhaustion evident in 𝐀𝐦's tone makes it sound like more of a statement. Izuku uses the light from his phone to examine his map, trying to recall where they went off track. "If we head back to the town we passed about a half hour ago, we'll be able to get onto Highway 95, which will take us to I-80 and get us to Reno." 𝐀𝐦 nods, the movement barely perceptible, perhaps imagined, before he flips on his signal, shifting the car into drive before pulling back onto the highway, heading the opposite direction to which they came. A relative silence settles over them once again, punctuated by 𝐈𝐻𝐻's occasional sniffle, underlined by the murmur Denki's soft words that Izuku can't make out, that he doesn't try to make out, respecting their privacy. It wasn't his place. Not now. 𝐈𝐻𝐻 had indicated as much. Izuku sighs, trying to massage away the growing headache at his temples. Sure, he had expected things to all blow over, but not like this. Maybe he wasn't as good at reading people as he thought. It's approaching 1 a.m. when 𝐀𝐦 pulls the car into a vacant parking lot, a yawn dragging from his lungs as he shifts into park, finally withdrawing his hands from the wheel and rubbing at his eyes. Fuck this night driving shit. His eyes are painfully dry and sensitive, and the LED headlights that apparently every single fucking driver on the road hadn't been helping. He lets his bleary eyes drift blissfully closed, chest heaving in another yawn, which he attempts to pass off as a sigh. Apparently, he fails. Next to him, he hears Izuku clear his throat. "You know, there's no rule that we have to be in Reno by tomorrow morning." "Well, today morning I guess, but anyway, we can stop for the night if you need to." "Really, it's no big deal. I'm fine," 𝐀𝐦 interrupts, eyes still shut. "Really we can, I'm fine," 𝐀𝐦 repeats, shutting Izuku up. When the other boy doesn't speak, 𝐀𝐦 heaves a sigh. An actual sigh, for the record, before opening his eyes again, feeling slightly better, but still far from good. "I just need some fresh air and caffeine." Izuku nods, but he still looks doubtful. "Well, fuck him," 𝐀𝐦 will just believe himself. It's not like he needs validation from that nerd anyway. Before Izuku can say anything further, 𝐀𝐦 unbuckles his seatbelt and climbs out of his car, the chill breeze immediately cutting through the thin fabric of his t-shirt, sending a shiver through his body. Seriously, was it ever going to get warmer? Still, the brisk air helps wake him up a bit more, and it feels good to stretch out his stiff limbs after such a prolonged period of driving. Honestly, when this is all over, 𝐀𝐦 figures he'll take a break from driving for a good week or two, maybe a month. Braving public transport might be worth it if it means not having a steering wheel in his hands. Finally, he returns to the car, blasting the fans to warm himself back up. Izuku throws a glance his way, something that appears worrying, but 𝐀𝐦 can't really tell in the low light. Whatever, he doesn't need the nerd worrying over him anyways. As 𝐀𝐦 buckles his seatbelt, Izuku speaks. "There's a McDonald's just down the road. We can stop there for coffee." 𝐀𝐦's first instinct is to snap at the other boy, but he can't bring his mouth to form the proper words. Exhaustion wears on him, physical and emotional, and it takes more effort than it should to even mumble out some sort of a sound that probably sounds like an agreement, but might just be a meaningless jumble of noise. Whatever, he's too tired to care at this point. Izuku's eyes narrow slightly. "Kaken," 𝐀𝐦 groans. "I swear to God, if you ask me if I'm fine one more time, I really will dump your dead body in a ditch in Reno. Should we wake the others up? Izuku asks instead, shrugging a shoulder towards the two boys in the back. 𝐲𝐬 and Denki had passed out sometime before midnight, their light snores filling the car every now and then. Katsuki shifts his eyes to the rear view, taking in the awkward and probably uncomfortable splay of bodies across the backseat. Denki's head is at an odd angle against the window, face smooshed against the glass while the rest of his body drapes across the seat in 𝐲𝐬's lap. 𝐲𝐬's angled in his seat, long legs cramped in the small space and head tipped back against the headrest, mouth hanging open stupidly. At any other time, Katsuki would be tempted to capture the moment in a picture. Seriously, they look ridiculous. But right here, right now, he can't bring himself to feel amused. He can't bring himself to feel anything. Really, like all the negative emotions he had been feeling were canceling each other out, leaving him numb. Or maybe he was simply too tired to process anything anymore. Still, his gaze lingers a little too long on the redhead, on his stupid ugly mouth that Katsuki can't tell if he wants to kiss senselessly or feed a fist and it's both. He just can't figure out the order. Izuku clears his throat before prompting, "Kaken?" Katsuki tears his gaze away, focusing on shifting the car into drive, swallowing past the all-too-familiar lump in his throat, the one he'd been fighting for the better part of the day. Of course, that had to be the only emotion allowed to slip through his haze of exhaustion. "Just leave them," he replies finally, pulling the car onto the main road again. If they need something, they'll wake themselves up. A quick trip through the drive-thru and 2XL coffees later, and they're back on the road again, cruise set and Reno bound. The caffeine takes the edge off of his exhaustion, but Katsuki's still far from alive, alert, awake, enthusiastic. At least he doesn't feel like murdering every other driver on the road for their headlights anymore. He settles for simply desiring to knock their lights out, figuratively and literally. Beside him, Izuku is quiet, sipping on his coffee and gaze fixed on the highway ahead. The nerd had been quiet all day, really, speaking only when spoken to. And honestly, Katsuki is thankful to have at least something good to show for the shitshow of a day he's had. Of course, the universe just loves fucking him over. "I know it's not really my business," Izuku starts, eyes never wavering from the road, "but is everything alright between you and 𝐲𝐬? You two are usually chummier than this." "You're right," Katsuki replies, jaw clenched. "It is none of your business." "Okay," Izuku replies simply, leaving it at that. And it should be the end of the conversation. It really should be. But whatever ancient deity Katsuki had pissed off to not only land himself on this stupid road trip, but also screw up the greatest friendship he ever had must not be done with him yet. That's the only explanation Katsuki can think of for the words that come flying out of his mouth next. "I told him that I love him." It comes out in a rush, nearly incomprehensible, and Katsuki takes a deep breath before he repeats, much slower, "I told him that I love him, but he doesn't love me back." "What? Izuku, that fucker actually has the nerve to act shocked," head whipping toward Katsuki, mouth gaping, as though Katsuki's stupidly pathetic crush on the redhead wasn't the most obvious thing in the world. "But I thought, what?" "Take your glasses off," Katsuki says, hands gripping the wheel in a vice. "If we're gonna have this conversation, I don't want you to see me." Izuku frowns. "How bad do you think my eyesight is?" "Just take them off," Katsuki repeats, swiping a hand half-heartedly at Izuku, who raises his hands in defense before slipping his glasses from his face. "There," Izuku says, raising his glasses to Katsuki as if to prove they're really off. Katsuki sighs. "We were in our hotel room," he explains, unable to stop the flow of words once it starts, "and he was having trouble sleeping so he crawled in with me. And he was so close and I just fuck. I just thought. I kissed him, and he kissed me back, and it was good. And then this morning he was really touchy and we kissed again and I told him that I love him and he flipped out. Like, he practically sprinted out of the room. Couldn't get away quick enough." He laughs, humorless. "I mean, how am I supposed to take that?" Izuku pauses briefly before answering. "Do you want my honest answer?" Katsuki scoffs. "Well, I don't want you to lie to my face." "Okay," Izuku concedes. "I guess first off, Ochako owes me money." And whatever Katsuki had expected Izuku to say, it definitely wasn't that. "What? We had a bet going to see who would confess to who first," Izuku explains. "Ochako thought 𝐲𝐬 would, but I put my money on you." And, okay, there were a few things to unpack there. For now, Katsuki settles with a simple why. Why the bet in general, or why bet on you? Honestly, Katsuki's not sure what he had meant by the question. The second one. Why bet on me? Because I know you. Izuku says this as though the answer were obvious. You always go for what you want. I figured your romantic pursuits would be the same way. Never you mind about my romantic pursuits, Katsuki grouses, shooting the other boy a weak glare that he's not even sure he sees. So why make the stupid bet in the first place? Being ace too boring for you. No love life of your own, so you gotta stick your nose into other people's. Izuku snorts. First of all, it's insulting of you to assume that since I don't experience sexual attraction, I must live a boring and unfulfilling life. But it's not entirely your fault you think that way. You've been socially conditioned to place way too high a value on sex and romance. I mean, how much of our society is based on sex? We've got the sexy hamburger commercials, products designed to make you more appealing to others, entertainment that always features a boring romance, etc. They make it seem like sex is the be-all end-all, and if you're not having it, then you're not living. Izuku shakes his head, running a hand through his curls. Like seriously, can't a person embark on a life-changing journey without some hackneyed romantic subplot taking over? Honestly, I think everyone needs to just eat some cornflakes and chill out. And he must be tired, for 𝐀𝐦 can't help the laugh that escapes his lips. Tell me how you really feel. Secondly, Izuku carries on, yeah, okay, I really was bored that day. Called it. The bet kinda started on accident, though, Izuku explains. Ochako, 𝐀𝐦, and I were doing some casual people watching when we saw you and 𝐈𝐻 blatantly flirting with each other, and 𝐀𝐦 had asked how long you two had been dating. So we explained that you weren't actually together even though literally everyone who's ever met you two figures you should be. To which Ochako claimed that the only reason you two weren't together was that 𝐈𝐻 hadn't confessed, since she figured you'd never have the guts to do it, so then I jumped in to defend your honor, like a friend would, and yeah. Izuku pauses to catch his breath. The rest is history. It takes longer than it should for everything to process, and even still 𝐀𝐻's sluggish brain doesn't catch everything. He decides to fixate on one point. 𝐀𝐦, really, all throughout high school, 𝐀𝐦 had been known for his obliviousness, especially when it came to social cues. Some of the guys on the hockey team always claimed that it was because he was a repressed virgin loser that no girl would ever, but 𝐀𝐻's always thought there was something more to it, something not so intentionally asshole-ish. Yeah, Izuku confirms. 𝐀𝐦 squints, and it's absolutely not because of the strain on his eyes. What the fuck? You and 𝐈𝐻 were both pretty obvious with your feelings, Izuku points out. That's why you'll have to forgive me for doubting that he doesn't love you back. Then why did he run away? But this time, 𝐀𝐦 catches the words on his tongue before they can escape, swallows them back down alongside that goddamn lump in his throat. Something hot pricks the backs of his eyes, and he knows he's lying by blaming it on the night driving, but he's not about to acknowledge the truth. Fuck. No, fuck this. He rubs a hand across his eyes, hoping to stifle the burning. This is stupid. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Izuku nods his head. Okay, and the conversation should have ended there. Would have ended there, if 𝐀𝐦 weren't so far in his head now, replaying every interaction he'd ever had with 𝐈𝐻, every conversation, every long look, every lingering touch, every kiss. The redhead had reciprocated everything, hadn't he? Really, up until the kiss, 𝐈𝐻 had been the one to instigate much of the attention, shameless flirt that he... Maybe that's it then. Maybe 𝐈𝐻 was only messing around. Maybe he was looking for a friends with benefits sort of thing, and was put off by the fact that 𝐀𝐦 didn't want to have sex with him right away. Maybe he wanted something casual. Maybe he didn't want anything as serious as love. But 𝐀𝐦 never did anything casually. He was an all-or-nothing kind of guy. And if 𝐈𝐻 really knew him as well as the redhead claimed to, he would have known that. Maybe that's the problem then. Maybe they had been wrong about each other from the start. The thought hurts more than the previous rejection. 𝐀𝐦 drags a long breath in through his nose, holding it a moment before releasing it through his mouth. It comes out much too shaky, so he repeats the process, doing his best to keep the sounds as silent as possible. There's no fucking way he's gonna have an emotional breakdown in the middle of nowhere, especially not in front of Deku. 𝐀𝐦 rubs a palm harshly across his treacherous eyes, wiping away the slight wetness gathered there. Izuku misreads his actions, intentionally or not. 𝐀𝐦 doesn't care to know. If you're getting tired, I can drive a while. Let you rest. 𝐀𝐦 sniffles, but tries to cover the sound by clearing his throat. I'm fine, he says for the billionth time that night, voice much too thick. Besides, you hate driving. Yeah, Izuku concedes, head cocked. But I hate getting into horrific car accidents because my friend fell asleep at the wheel even more. I'm not your friend, 𝐀𝐦 replies, because that's apparently the right thing to focus on right now. Izuku chuckles at this. Right, sorry, my mistake. This isn't a friendship, it's a complicationship. 𝐀𝐦 narrows his eyes. That's a really stupid word. 𝐈𝐻 came up with it, Izuku says with a shrug. Of course he did. That idiot. 𝐀𝐦 shakes his head, huffing a breathy laugh. Fuck, I love him so much. Fucking asshole. And of course I had to go and ruin everything. You didn't ruin everything, Izuku protests. 𝐀𝐦 scoffs. Did you miss the part where I said he ran away? No, which brings me to my second point. Izuku repositions himself in his seat so that he's angled more towards 𝐀𝐦. Back pressed against the door. Just because he ran away doesn't mean he doesn't love you. Katsuki opens his mouth to reply, to tell Izuku just how stupid that sentiment is, but Izuku doesn't give him the chance. Look, I know I'm not exactly an expert in the romance department, but I do know a thing or two about relationships in general, enough to know that people run away for a whole bunch of reasons, and it's rarely out of a lack of love. This time, Katsuki doesn't stop the question from spilling from his lips. Then why did he run away? Izuku just shrugs, as though Katsuki had simply asked about his restaurant preference rather than his emotional doomsday. I don't know, why don't you ask him? I have. Katsuki grinds out through gritted teeth. Have you? Really? Katsuki rolls his eyes as Izuku continues. I mean, your argument notwithstanding, have you two really talked at all? It's not that easy, Katsuki replies, because it isn't. There are too many variables, too many things that could go wrong, and Katsuki's not prepared to take the risk. Of course not. Katsuki chooses to ignore the sarcasm. I mean, you heard him before. He doesn't even want to talk about it. He sighs, running a hand through his hair. Maybe we should just forget about it, pretend it never happened and move on. It'll probably be better for both of us in the long run. Maybe, Izuku concedes. But you don't get to make that decision for him. But I don't want to make things worse. And you won't, Izuku insists. I mean, romantic feelings aside, do you really think 𝐲𝐸 cares so little about you that he'd just throw your entire friendship away over this? Katsuki wants to believe he's right, but after everything that had happened that day, I don't know, okay, he says, hating how tired and defeated his voice sounds. I don't know. Kakin, Izuku trails off, voice laden with sympathy. And it really speaks to Katsuki's state of mind that he doesn't immediately attack the other boy for it. I'm a bad friend, he says instead, the statement coming somewhere out of left field, yet it feels like the right thing to say, an admission he needed to get off his chest to move forward. Sometimes, Izuku admits, but never to 𝐲𝐸. Not until today. You mean, Katsuki mumbles. Yesterday, technically. Katsuki shoots the other boy a swift glare. Fuck off. Time's a construct. Yeah. He waves him off with a laugh. A moment passes before Izuku asks, you trust him, don't you? It's a stupid question, really. Yeah, of course I do. And when he answers, there's no hesitation in his words, spoken with the same assurance he'd used to claim that the sky is blue, or that the earth is round, or that straight pretted M is the stupidest thing he's ever heard of. Then trust him with this, with your feelings. Izuku's gaze is filled with an intensity that burns into Katsuki's own. He won't let you down. Katsuki has to look away, gaze back on the highway before him. We'll see. And since he's already swallowed most of his pride by having this conversation with Deku of all people, he doesn't mind sacrificing a bit more. Thanks, or whatever. Izuku smiles, settling back properly in his seat. It's nothing. A moment of silence passes between them. It's comfortable, the tension of the day momentarily tempered by the vulnerability shared between two estranged friends. Almost enough for Katsuki to start to maybe consider thinking of Izuku as a friend. Almost, but not quite. Then a particularly aggressive snore from the backseat shatters the silence, and the moment passes along with it. Katsuki presses his lips together tightly, holding back the laughter threatening to escape, but when Izuku fails to rein in his own, Katsuki can't help but join in. Oh my god, Izuku wheezes, bent over in his seat, the timing. Fucking perfect, Katsuki agrees, wiping the tears from the corners of his eyes with his thumb. They regain their composure soon after, the noise of their laughter somehow not rousing the boys in the back seat. Silence settles over the group once again, and although not weighted with the same significance as before, it's no less comfortable. Of course, Katsuki feels obligated to break it, unfinished business nagging in the back of his mind. He briefly meets Izuku's gaze, eyes narrowed. We never had this conversation, got it? Don't ruin this for me. Izuku whines like the baby he is. I'm serious, Katsuki insists, lighting smacking the steering wheel for emphasis. This never happened. Fine. Okay. Izuku raises his hands in surrender. And here I thought we were finally getting back to the friends part of our friends to enemies to rivals to friends character arc. But whatever. And that's why we can't be friends. You always say stupid shit like that. Katsuki shakes his head. I mean, when have we ever been rivals? Convenience store. I know you've been gunning for my Employee of the Month title ever since I got it. Izuku clenches a fist in front of his face. Luckily, I still have the power of friendship on my side, which I'll use to defeat you once and for all. Katsuki groans. Oh my god, stop trying to be meta, you useless side character. Izuku cocks his head. If I'm a side character, then who are you? The guy who wants you to shut the fuck up. Yeah, I walked into that one, Izuku admits, shaking his head. Sprinted, Katsuki corrects him. We have such good banter, Izuku points out. I hope we get more screen time together in the future. That's it. Katsuki glares at Izuku, this one carrying much more heat. Next town, I'm kicking you out of my car. Can you kick him out at a gas station or something? Asks a voice from behind. and 𝐀𝐦 looks up into the rear view to meet the gaze of Denki, face still smooshed against the window, but eyes cracked open. "I gotta pee." 𝐀𝐦 rolls his eyes. "Of course you do." A little under 20 minutes later, they pull into a 24-hour gas station, one marketed towards truckers. 𝐲𝐬 wakes up as 𝐀𝐦 stops the car at a pump, jostled awake by Denki's hasty scrambling to climb out, practically sprinting the short distance to the station. Izuku shakes his head in amusement, following after the other boy, though at a considerably more reasonable pace. 𝐀𝐦 gets to pumping gas, settling the nozzle in place and clicking it on before leaning back against the car, a yawn stretching his jaw as he rubs his eyes. They still had a good 4 hours or so until they hit Reno. "Fantastic." As if sensing 𝐀𝐦's displeasure, 𝐲𝐬 speaks up. "I can drive the rest, if you want." He hadn't followed the others inside, instead hovering on the opposite side of the car, languidly stretching stiff muscles. 𝐀𝐦 takes a deep breath before replying, turning his head just enough to see the redhead out of the corner of his eye. "Nah, it's fine. It's not much longer. I can finish it off." 𝐲𝐬 looks like he wants to argue, but he snaps his jaw shut, nodding. "Okay." Silence settles over the two, strained and heavy. 𝐀𝐦 watches the numbers rise on the pump as a way to distract himself, hoping 𝐲𝐬 would head off sooner rather than later. The redhead has other plans. "Hey, Cat. I'm really sorry about everything today. Yesterday, I guess. I was just..." "Don't," 𝐀𝐦 interrupts, just as the pump clicks off. He busies himself with the nozzle, replacing it in its holster before screwing the gas cap back into place. "Let's not get into this now." "But, 𝐀𝐦 makes to head into the station, but 𝐲𝐬 quickly jogs after him, stopping him by the arm. "Come on, we have to talk about this." 𝐀𝐦 turns back towards 𝐲𝐬, glaring at the hand gripping his arm but too exhausted to do anything about it. Still, 𝐲𝐬 takes the hint, releasing him before taking a step back. The distance is painful somehow, yet it also gives 𝐀𝐦 the much-needed space to breathe. And he does, taking a deep breath as he braces himself to meet the other's gaze. He's sure 𝐲𝐬 is trying to appear calm, neutral, but he's never had a decent poker face. His eyes are much too expressive, always have been, and right now, all 𝐀𝐦 could see in those crimson irises is pain and fear, so much fear. It sends nausea coiling in his gut, and he fights the urge to look away. "Do you really think 𝐲𝐬 cares so little about you that he'd just throw your entire friendship away over this? Trust him with this?" But despite Izuku's words echoing through his mind, 𝐀𝐦 can't bring himself to have this conversation yet. It takes what little resolve he has left, but 𝐀𝐦 holds 𝐲𝐬's gaze. "We'll talk about it." And before 𝐲𝐬 can voice his doubts, 𝐀𝐦 repeats, "We will talk about it. He just ... What? Honestly, 𝐀𝐦's not even sure anymore. All he knows is, he's not in the right headspace to have this conversation. Met yet, so he goes with that. "Look, I'm not ready to have this conversation, okay? My head's not in the right place right now. I don't think either of ours is. So let's just ... hold off for a while. Let things settle a bit, okay?" 𝐲𝐬's shoulders slump, but 𝐀𝐦 can't tell if it's relief or disappointment. "Yeah, okay, you're probably right. Thanks for being honest with me. Always." 𝐀𝐦 punches 𝐲𝐬 lightly in the shoulder, hoping the playfulness offsets whatever negative emotion the other boy might be feeling. "Now hurry up and do whatever you gotta do so we can finally get our asses to Reno." 𝐲𝐬 grins, barely the quirk of his lips. "Right, let's do that." They head their separate ways once they get inside the gas station. From across the store, Izuku shoots him a questioning glance. 𝐀𝐦 can only shake his head. Izuku's shoulders drop, but 𝐀𝐦 looks away before he can see the look of disappointment flash across his eyes. He's already let enough people down for one day. It's early when they finally pull into Reno, the sun just barely cresting the horizon, bathing the sleeping city in pale light. Their arrival brings a muted air of satisfaction, glad to be there, but too tired to really appreciate it. Izuku's eyelids droop, making it difficult to take in any of the city's sights. They've still a while before check-in begins at the hotel, so to kill time they decide breakfast is in order. 𝐀𝐦 pulls the car into a Denny's parking lot, killing the engine with a deep sigh before slumping back against his seat. "I never want to drive again." And honestly, Izuku can't blame him. Over 2,000 kilometers in 2 days is a lot for one person, though it's not like nobody ever offered to take over for him. Still, Izuku doesn't bring up that little point. "I really appreciate you doing this for me," he says instead. "Better to be grateful than dead." A testament to his exhaustion, 𝐀𝐦 doesn't really respond, head tipped back against the headrest. Eyes slid shut as he hums an acknowledgement, not really accepting Izuku's thanks, but also not redirecting it with some snarky reply. Izuku counts it as a win. "I don't know about you guys, but I am famished," Denki says, untangling himself from his seatbelt. "Let's get some fucking brekkie before I actually starve to death." "Yeah, I second that," 𝐲𝐬 declares, struggling to pull his bunny hug back on in the cramped space of the backseat. He knocks his elbow against the window, yelping out a pained, "Oh." Izuku chuckles, shaking his head as he forces his tired limbs into action, unbuckling his seatbelt and pushing open his door. He has to pause there a moment, already exhausted from the slight expenditure. Meanwhile, Denki claps Katsuki hard on the shoulder, the latter jolting in his sleep. "You coming, Kaken?" Katsuki rubs at his eyes. "Y'all go ahead," he mumbles, voice heavy. "I'm gonna nap." 𝐻𝐸 finally pulls his head through the neck of his bunny hut. "You sure, man?" Whatever reply Katsuki has is swallowed by a yawn. Denki laughs, reaching up again to give his shoulder a squeeze. "Fair enough. We'll see you in a bit, I guess. Try not to get kidnapped by our stalker." Katsuki flips him off, and Denki just laughs, finally pushing open his door and climbing out of the car. 𝐻𝐸 pauses a moment, looking like he wants to say something, but he decides against it in the end, silently pushing open his own door and climbing out, following after Denki as he makes his way towards the restaurant. Izuku finally manages to pull himself out of the car, gripping the frame to help his balance. He glances back at Katsuki, who looks to almost be asleep already. "You want anything?" "Want you to leave," Katsuki mumbles, eyes firmly shut. Izuku shrugs, the action instinctive but ultimately useless. "'Kay, remember to lock the doors while we're gone." This time, Katsuki does open his eyes to glare over at Izuku. "I'm not stupid," he spits, exhaustion temporarily giving way to frustration or maybe fueling it. He reclines his seat all the way back, resettling himself against the headrest as his eyes slip closed again. "Now go away." Izuku nods, another useless action, before closing the door. He pauses a moment, only leaving once he hears the locks engage. Satisfied, he makes his way into the restaurant. It's easy enough to locate the other two boys. The restaurant is basically vacant, excluding themselves and an older gentleman seated in a booth just beyond the host station. Denki and 𝐻𝐸 are at a corner booth in the back, and Izuku makes his way towards them, sliding into the seat next to 𝐻𝐸. "We ordered you an orange juice," Denki tells him as he settles into the booth, gaze fixed on the tiny creamer containers he's currently attempting to stack in a pyramid. "Hope you don't mind." "No, it's fine," Izuku replies, wondering if he's showing signs of a vitamin C deficiency. Seriously, why is orange juice their go-to drink for him? Did he offhandedly mention a preference for it earlier in the trip? Or was it some sort of secret prank they were pulling on him? Was orange juice actually code for something? Whatever, it could probably be worse. "Thanks. No problem, dude." Denki finishes his pyramid, grinning proudly at the haphazardly stacked creams. 𝐻𝐸 glances at it briefly over his menu, then reaches out and knocks the tower over, sending the little creams scattering across the table. Denki levels him with a hard look. "Fuck you." Izuku picks up a menu from the table and then immediately drops it again, the slippery plastic sliding out from between his fingers. He tries again, trying to force his fingers to cooperate, and 𝐻𝐸 watches him for a second, then nods. "Yeah, what?" Izuku asks, apparently missing something. "What?" 𝐻𝐸 echoes, apparently also missing whatever it was that Izuku had missed despite having replied to it earlier. Or maybe Izuku is just going crazy. That's always been an option. Still, he doesn't have to think about it for long, the waitress arriving at their table with their drinks. She sets them down at their places, and Izuku stares at the glass of orange juice placed before him. The waitress departs, giving them more time with the menus. Izuku's eyes narrow. "You okay there, bud?" Denki asks, taking a swig from his glass of milk. Gross, who just drinks plain white milk? Whatever, he had more pressing issues to attend to. "When did I order this?" Izuku asks, eyeing the orange juice, his orange juice, apparently, suspiciously. 𝐻𝐸 and Denki share a look. It's part amusement, part concern. But why would they? Before he can finish the thought, Denki's turning back towards him, fingers folded on the table before him as he levels Izuku with a sickly sweet smile. "You didn't order it, I did. Like I told you when you got here." "Oh." Izuku shifts his eyes back to his orange juice. It looks emptier than it did before. Had he already drunk from it? Weird. "You sure you're okay?" 𝐻𝐸 asks, face creased with concern. "Like, did you get any sleep at all on the way here?" Izuku considers the question for a moment. Had he slept at all? He had done his best not to, but surely he dozed off a few times throughout the night. At least, there were definitely gaps in his memory regarding the last leg of their drive. "I got a little, I think," he decides eventually, finger swiping through the condensation on the edge of his glass. "I was trying to stay awake to make sure Kaken was alright." Denki shakes his head in amusement. "You're a saint, Zuko. Stupid, but a saint all the same." 𝐻𝐸 just sighs. "We'll need to figure out a better driving system for the way back. We can't just have one dude doing it all. It's dangerous, honestly, could even get us killed. Or worse." Denki tacks on, gathering the creams again. "Expelled." Izuku waits for the declaration of nerd to ring through the air, but it never comes. Odd, usually Kaken's, oh, right. He's not here right now. Maybe Izuku is more exhausted than he thought. The waitress comes by soon after to take their orders, and Izuku realizes once again that he hasn't actually looked at his menu. Oops, he hopes this doesn't become a regular issue. He ends up ordering whatever 𝐷𝐸 does. It's probably a safe enough choice. 𝐲𝐸 orders a plate for himself, and then an extra to go. For 𝐘𝐻, he explains once the waitress takes their menus and departs again. He'll need to eat something when he wakes up. There's a warmth that settles in Izuku's chest at the gesture. It's just as he thought. Regardless of what had transpired between the two boys before, their relationship was not damaged beyond repair. Any romantic feelings aside, 𝐲𝐸 and Katsuki obviously cared for each other. There had to be something else going on that caused 𝐲𝐸's reaction in the hotel, then something more complicated than unrequited emotion. Maybe he was already arranged to marry someone else. Maybe he was being blackmailed. Maybe he realized that making out with someone as soon as they woke up is actually pretty disgusting. Like seriously, at least swish with some mouthwash before swapping spit with another human being. It's not that complicated. What are you mumbling about over there? 𝐷𝐸's voice startles him from his train of thought. Wait, had he been saying all that out loud? Still are. Actually, 𝐷𝐸 points out, fortifying his newly built creamer pyramid with a wall of sugar packets stacked like sandbags around the tower's base. A truly solid defense, in Izuku's humble opinion. Izuku stares hard at his orange juice. It's full now, but hadn't it been empty only a second ago? When had he gotten it refilled? Or had he been imagining things all along? I think I need a nap. You need a little more than a nap, I'd say. 𝐲𝐸 laughs, sipping at his coffee. Oh, that's hot. He takes another sip. Oh, Izuku reaches for his orange juice. The movement of his hand makes him dizzy. That's probably not good. He brings his face closer to the glass instead, sipping what little juice he can reach with his lips. Much better. Man, I wonder what you would be like high, 𝐷𝐸 says, leaning back in his seat. Probably be hilarious. You ever smoked before, Zuku? Only smoked on the dance floor, Izuku says with a shrug. 𝐷𝐸 huffs a laugh. What? I'm sorry, I don't know. Izuku rubs a hand over his face. I don't feel like an actual human person right now. That's 'cause you're not, 𝐷𝐸 informs him, leaning his elbows on the table. Right now, you're just a mass of pure energy arranged in the shape of a human. Here we go, 𝐲𝐸 sighs, taking a sip of his coffee. Oh, damn it. You see, 𝐷𝐸 goes on, ignoring his friend's pain. There are actually two different planes of reality, the physical and the metaphysical. We usually only occupy the physical plane, but can't really access the metaphysical, for all things would cease to exist. However, we can get close to the metaphysical through a series of temporal gateways, liminal spaces that exist between realms, outside the bonds of space and time. How can they be temporal then? 𝐲𝐸 asks, but 𝐷𝐸 presses on unperturbed. All Denny's franchises are gateways between the hours of midnight and approximately 7 a.m. Give or take a few minutes. As soon as you enter the restaurant between those times, you transcend the physical plane to the in-between, temporarily shedding your physical body and ceasing to exist in either plane until you re-emerge. Like the hyperbolic time chamber, Izuku says, sipping from his orange juice. No, wait, it's empty now. 𝐷𝐸 glares at him, scoffing. No, it's nothing like that. I mean, seriously dude, have you even been listening? Izuku mumbles out a quick sorry, and 𝐷𝐸 takes a deep breath, face relaxing before he continues. Anyway, like I was saying, while in the in-between, you cease to exist. But everything else ceases to exist as well. Reality only exists in the in-between insofar as you believe it does, or how you perceive it. That's why everything seems a little off right now. Your brain isn't used to not perceiving reality, and is trying to make up for it by constructing reality based on what it believes it's supposed to be perceiving. Yes, Izuku answers at the same time that 𝐲𝐸 says no. The rules are different here, 𝐷𝐸 goes on. I mean, why do you think Denny's social media exudes such chaotic energy? 𝐷𝐸 himself has lived for so long in the in-between that he's alienated himself from physical reality. But he's attempting to stay connected to that reality through a series of weird Tumblr posts and savage Twitter clapbacks. Izuku's eyebrows scrunch. Wait, I thought Wendy's Twitter was the savage one. 𝐷𝐸 ignores him, too caught up in his tangent. And since Denny's doesn't actually exist in reality in the same way that other corporations do, they don't experience any of the negative consequences of their actions. The rules of the physical plane simply don't apply to them. 𝐷𝐸 takes a long swig from his milk, setting his glass down with a satisfied sigh. You get what I'm saying, right? Izuku nods. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. No, it doesn't, 𝐲𝐸 groans, running a hand through his hair. Literally not one word you've said has made any sense. Not a single word. 𝐷𝐸 just inspects his nails. Denny said there would be unbelievers. Oh my god. 𝐲𝐸 pinches the bridge of his nose. You really gotta stay off of YouTube. 𝐷𝐸 snorts. Who are you, my mom? 𝐲𝐸 sneers at him. You'd like that, wouldn't you? The two burst into laughter, and Izuku just grins, shaking his head as he reaches for his. Wait, where did his orange juice go? There's a glass of water before him. Had he ordered it? Or had his brain simply forgotten how to perceive orange juice here in the in-between? Don't let 𝐷𝐸 get inside your head. 𝐬𝐬 tells him, stuffing a forkful of fluffy pancake into his mouth. You asked for water when the waitress dropped off our food. Huh, that makes sense. But wait, how did 𝐬𝐬 know he'd been wondering about that? Had 𝐓𝐡𝐢 been thinking out loud again? Or could 𝐬𝐬 read minds? 𝐬𝐬 swallows another bite. You're thinking out loud. I mean, seriously man. It was funny before, but now it's kinda concerning. Like, do you need to head back out to the car? We can box up your food and cover your bill. Speak for yourself, Denki mumbles, voice muffled by a mouthful of food. I'm fine, 𝐓𝐡𝐢 says, turning his attention to his food that apparently arrived already. It's a pretty standard breakfast plate, bacon, eggs, toast. At least his brain remembers how to perceive these culinary staples. 𝐬𝐬 eyes him doubtfully but doesn't press further. If you say so. They eat their meals without much fanfare from there on, Denki keeping up a steady stream of chatter about nothing and everything. 𝐓𝐡𝐢 only half listens, focus directed more on eating his breakfast without choking on anything. Have you guys ever thought about just running away and starting a whole new life somewhere where no one has any preconceived ideas about you? Denki asks, sagely gazing at the strip of bacon clenched between his fingertips as though it held within its greasy confines the secrets to the universe. Nah, 𝐬𝐬 admits with a shrug, but I have thought about what it would be like to be a pet golden retriever to a wealthy suburban white family in California. Denki points his bacon at 𝐬𝐬. That's basically the same thing. Great minds think alike, 𝐬𝐬 says, raising his coffee mug to Denki. 𝐓𝐡𝐢 had never considered what life as a golden retriever would be like. It'd probably be a lot more fulfilling than life as a human, he figures. It's not like dogs ever have to worry about their estranged fathers, after all. Or do they? 𝐓𝐡𝐢 scoops a spoonful of scrambled eggs from his plate, lifting the spoon to his mouth. He misses entirely, utensil colliding with the skin of his cheek, his eggs tumbling down to his lap. He sighs. This never would have happened to a golden retriever. And that's why I no longer trust the color orange. Denki finishes his tirade. And now 𝐓𝐡𝐢 is a little disappointed he hadn't been paying closer attention. That's pretty weird, dude, 𝐬𝐬 says, idly twirling his fork, eyes narrowed in thought. Denki shrugs, taking a bite of his bacon. That's summer camp, man. So what's the plan for the day, 𝐓𝐡𝐢? You got that convention thing? 𝐬𝐬 asks, shifting the topic. And 𝐓𝐡𝐢 works to shift his focus to the conversation. Honestly, why does social interaction have to be so exhausting? The convention starts today. Yeah, 𝐓𝐡𝐢 tells him after swallowing another bite. But I've only got passes for tomorrow. That's when Yagi Toshinori's panel is. Cool, 𝐬𝐬 nods, not really seeming interested but doing his best to disguise it. Guess we have today to recuperate and explore then. Well, recuperate at least, Denki points out. Cat's not gonna want to leave the hotel. And there's no way he'll let us take his car anywhere. Do you forget that walking exists? 𝐬𝐬 asks, squinting at his friend. Denki rolls his eyes. No, I did not forget. I'm just lazy. I mean, we're not all varsity athletes, you know. All the more reason to go walking then, 𝐬𝐬 decides, clapping the other boy on the shoulder. Denki nearly chokes on his bacon. I'll probably just hang out in the hotel, 𝐓𝐡𝐢 says as Denki attempts to recover. The one I booked for us yesterday has a pool and hot tub I'd like to use. That, and he needs time to not only mentally prepare himself for potentially meeting his hero, but also figure out the next phase of his dad plan. Oh God, he really hopes he didn't say that out loud. He must be safe, for the others don't acknowledge it. Oh sweet, pool party, 𝐬𝐬 cheers, pumping his fist. We can all chillax today at the pool. Then tomorrow while you're at the convention, the rest of us can explore. I've got a few places we need to hit up before we leave, Denki says, having finally regained the ability to breathe. My family always watched Reno 911 together, so I obviously gotta check out the police station, and I wanted to recreate the new boot goofing scene we quoted all the time, so I know it'd make their day. And they've got this place that does Reiki or whatever, which I think will give me cool chakra powers. I don't know, I didn't read too far into it. My dad told me about this automotive museum too. He wanted me to take pictures for him, 𝐬𝐬 adds. So I guess we've got a full agenda for tomorrow. Prepare for all manner of hijinks. Denki laughs, fist bumping 𝐬𝐬. As an afterthought, he turns towards 𝐓𝐡𝐢. Sorry for leaving you out, man. I don't mind. I just wanted to come here for the convention, after all. 𝐓𝐡𝐢 shrugs. I didn't really expect you guys to tag along. Denki claps his hands. Great. I'm glad everything is working out perfectly. Now we can all just enjoy this trip together and have nothing go wrong at all. 𝐬𝐬 quirks an eyebrow. Thanks, I think you might have just… Nope. Denki interrupts, smiling forcibly. The rules are different in the in-between. Manifestation is a lot stronger here than on the physical plane. I have spoken these things into existence, so they shall come to be. The waitress returns with a go container and their bills, effectively ending the conversation. After paying, they make their way back out to the car. The sky has lightened slightly since they arrived, shades of pink and orange giving way to brilliant blue hues. It seems like it'll be a beautiful day. Too bad 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐬 is probably going to waste most of it sleeping. He glances at his phone for the time. Their breakfast had lasted about 40 minutes. Odd. It had felt like he had been inside that Denny's for hours. Guess sleep deprivation will do that to you. Nah, that's the Denny's effect. Part of it being a gateway and all that, 𝗀𝐻𝐸 says, glancing back at 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐬 over his shoulder. Also, if you're gonna keep monologuing your inner thoughts, mind sharing something super embarrassing. It'll make the situation so much funnier when we chirp you about it later. 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐬 racks his brain, but honestly, he can't think of anything particularly embarrassing that's happened to him. He's usually got a good sense of humor when it comes to his moments of ineptitude, and as such can't really call those experiences embarrassing. Besides, the sentiment implies that he's had something notable happen in his life, and ... well, at this point he's not so sure. 𝗀𝐻𝐸 spins to face 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐬. Dude, I said embarrassing. Not hella depressing. 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐬 rubs the back of his head. Sorry, the car is still locked. 𝐘𝐻𝐸 curled up in the driver's seat, jacket draped over his face to block out the light. 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐬 knocks on the window and 𝐘𝐻𝐸 startles, ripping the jacket away as his head whips in the direction of the sound. 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐬 grins and waves. 𝐘𝐻𝐸 flips him off. Still, the locks click, and 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐬 pulls open the passenger side door, sliding into his seat. 𝐘𝐻𝐸 rubs at his red-rimmed eyes, looking every bit as sleep-deprived as he is, a yawn stretching his jaw before he mumbles, "You fuckers sure didn't waste any time. I didn't want to deprive you of my awesome presence for too long," 𝗀𝐻𝐸 replies, pulling his door closed. "God forbid I get any peace and quiet," 𝐘𝐻𝐸 says, rolling his eyes. Then his door opens, and he turns to glare at the offender. "What the foo?" 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐬 cuts him off. "I'm driving us to the hotel," he states, stepping away from the door and holding it open. "Swap me seats." "No way. I can still drive." 𝐘𝐻𝐸 starts to argue, but 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐬 silences him with a stern look. 𝐘𝐻𝐸 must really be tired if that's all it takes to shut him up. Or maybe it's the fact that 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐬 holds a certain power over the other boy. 𝗀𝐻𝐸 taps him on the shoulder. "Hey man, this probably isn't the best time for your narration." 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐬 clamps a hand over his mouth, squeaking out a muffled sorry. Luckily, the other two are too caught up in their own discussion to have noticed his commentary. "Seriously dude, this isn't worth arguing over. Just let me drive," 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐬 is saying, free hand gripping the door tightly. "I'm fine," 𝗀𝐻𝐸 hisses back, the lack of heat in his voice betraying the fact that he is absolutely not fine. "I can drive for 15 fucking minutes to get to the hotel." "I don't care. You're not driving." And there's something in 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐬's tone that leaves no room for argument, but that doesn't mean 𝗀𝐻𝐸 doesn't at least try. "But, 𝗀𝐻𝐸's mouth opens to reply, but 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐬 cuts him off again. "𝗀𝐻𝐸, fine." 𝗀𝐻𝐸 climbs out of the car, mumbling under his breath angrily as he makes his way to the free seat behind 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐬. He slams the door closed with just a bit more force than necessary, shaking the frame of the car and jolting a wince out of 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐬. If any of them had done that, 𝗀𝐻𝐸 would have their heads. He supposes the rules are different when it's your own car. 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐬 tucks himself into the driver's seat, closing his door much more gently. He turns around to pass the go container back to 𝗀𝐻𝐸. "Here, we got you breakfast." "I'm not hungry," 𝗀𝐻𝐸 grumbles, but accepts the container anyway. "Look, I know you feel like shit right now, but it's only gonna be worse if you don't eat anything." 𝗀𝐻𝐻𝐬 resettles in his seat, beginning to adjust its position. "At least eat the toast before it gets soggy. We both know how much you hate wasting food." "Ass," 𝗀𝐻𝐸 mumbles, but opens the container to pull out a piece of triangle-cut toast. He rips a bite out of it angrily, not bothering with any spreads like some sort of animal. "Happy," he mumbles around his mouthful. "Very settled." 𝗀𝐻𝐻𝐬 glances up in the rear view. "Cat, thank you." There's a raw sincerity in his voice, words carrying greater weight than a simple conversation about breakfast foods, or maybe 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐬 is just reading too far into this. "Whatever," 𝗀𝐻𝐸 says with a sigh, not quite meeting 𝗀𝐻𝐻𝐬's gaze. "Just hurry up and drive." Their hotel this time is considerably less crack house-ish than the one before, an increase in quality born of a sacrifice for quantity. The four of them would share one room this time, which had seemed like a perfectly feasible idea when 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐬 had booked the room earlier in their trip, but now seems like a recipe for disaster, new circumstances considered. Still, 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐬 likes to think of himself as somewhat of an optimist. Maybe things would be fine after a good night's rest. The room is pretty standard as far as hotels go. 2 queen-sized beds, a TV atop a wide-set dresser, a counter with a microwave, coffee pot, and mini fridge, and a small couch pressed against the far wall. A modest bathroom is attached near the front, creating an initial bottleneck feel to an already tight space. But 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐬 has yet to notice any empty needles lying discarded on the carpet, so really, he can't complain. 𝗀𝐻𝐸 faceplants onto one of the beds as soon as they walk in the door. Bother me and die, he hisses, voice muffled by pillows and really tempering any of the heat in his threat. Still, none of the others are willing to test his patience at this point. They set their bags down out of the way as quietly as they can manage, wincing at every slight creak in the floor, every brush of fabric. Luckily, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 never stirs. So, sleeping arrangements. 𝐷𝐬𝐬 whispers, surveying the room. I'm about ready for another nap. There's no way we're getting 𝐻𝐻 to share a bed. 𝐼𝐸 decides, glancing at their unconscious friend starfished atop the comforter. If you two are okay with it, you can take the second bed and I'll sleep on the couch. No, you two can take the bed and I'll sleep on the couch, 𝐬𝐸 insists. I mean, you are guests on my road trip. It's only polite. You need more rest than we do though, 𝐼𝐸 reasons. I'll sleep perfectly fine on the couch, don't worry. No, really, I should. Oh my god, shut up. A new voice cuts in, and the three turn to find a very pissy 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 glaring at them from the bed. Just let the nerd take the damn couch so I can sleep in peace. Seriously, I've never heard anyone worse at whispering than you losers. Sorry, man, 𝐼𝐸 says, rubbing the back of his neck. We'll be quieter. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 shoots him a look that says you better before settling back into the bed, this time slipping himself under the comforter and drawing it up over his head as a barrier. So, 𝐷𝐬𝐬 starts, gaze focused on 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's blanket cocoon to ensure the other boy is not about to reawaken in a rage and bite his head off ... or something like that, probably. Honestly, how would 𝐬𝐸 know? Everyone agrees on sleeping arrangements. 𝐬𝐸 shrugs. I'm fine with it. Really, I don't mind sleeping on couches, and it'd be a lot more comfortable for me since I'm the smallest of us three. 𝐼𝐸 cocks his head. Yeah, I guess you have a point there. If you're sure, you can take the couch, but if it's bad, you can switch with me, okay. Okay, 𝐬𝐸 agrees easily enough. He has more pressing matters to deal with, after all. Now, I really gotta lay down before I actually pass out. They find an extra pillow and spare blankets in the dresser, quickly setting up a makeshift bed on the couch for 𝐬𝐸. He changes into some sweats before curling himself into the blankets, quickly melting into the comfort of actually being able to lay down and rest. Seriously, who knew traveling could be so exhausting? He doesn't remember falling asleep, but he awakens several hours later to the muted buzz of the TV playing in the background. It's fairly dark in the room, save for the lights thrown across the wall by the TV, but 𝐬𝐸 is sure that it's still daytime. He couldn't have possibly slept an entire day away, right? He fumbles around for his phone, eventually finding it on the floor next to the couch where he had probably dropped it when he nodded off. He checks the time. 3:48. It's later than he had planned to sleep, but not as bad as it could be, he supposes. With a yawn, 𝐬𝐸 sits himself up, rubbing his eyes. His body still feels too heavy, his mind disoriented, but a really good nap can do that to you. At least he's gotten enough sleep to realize how absolutely insane 𝐷𝐬𝐬's theory about Denny's. It's as good an indicator as any as to the functioning state of 𝐬𝐸's mind. Hey man, did we wake you? It's 𝐼𝐸's voice, just above a whisper. 𝐬𝐸 turns his attention towards it, finding 𝐼𝐸 and 𝐷𝐬𝐬 lounging on their bed, phones in hand. They're both looking over at him, waiting for his response. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's still fast asleep, blonde hair barely visible from beneath the comforter. Nah, it was about time I woke up anyways, 𝐬𝐸 replies, stretching out his back. Probably, 𝐼𝐸 says with a shrug. We were gonna give you guys until 4 before waking you up anyways. So you've just made it easier on us, really. Yeah, now you can be the one that cat murders when we wake him up, 𝐷𝐬𝐬 adds with a laugh. 𝐬𝐸 frowns. Gee, lucky me. Anyways, 𝐼𝐸 says, changing the topic. We were gonna order in an early supper here in a bit. There's a little restaurant attached to the hotel that we can order from. 𝐷𝐬𝐬 and I found it while we were checking out the hotel. We also tested out the pool for you. It's very wet. 𝐷𝐬𝐬 cocks his head, cupping his chin with his fingers. Or is it? It is, 𝐼𝐸𝐬 says with a roll of his eyes. Allegedly, 𝐷𝐬𝐬 insists. But 𝐼𝐸𝐬 seems to ignore him. We figured pizza would be easy enough, if that's okay with you. 𝐼𝐸𝐬 goes on, returning his attention to 𝐬𝐸. You can pick the kind, unless you want pineapple. Then I might have to hit you. Should we be waking cat up? 𝐷𝐬𝐬 asks, but his question goes largely unacknowledged in the face of a much greater injustice. What do you have against pineapple on pizza? 𝐬𝐸 questions the redhead, trying to sound genuinely curious rather than disgusted. He must fail, for 𝐼𝐸𝐬 seems taken aback. Well, if I wanted to eat fruit, I wouldn't be ordering a pizza, would I? This argument is stupid, 𝐷𝐬𝐬 says, setting his phone aside before throwing his legs over the edge of the bed. I think I'm gonna dump cold water over 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's head. Tomatoes a fruit. Yet you don't seem upset about putting tomato sauce on pizza, 𝐬𝐸 reasons, and 𝐼𝐸𝐬 scoffs. Pizza sauce and tomatoes are two distinct things. 𝐼𝐸𝐬 insists, voice rising despite their sleeping friend. I mean, by your logic, ketchup could be considered a fruit product too, but no one's insane enough to believe that. 𝐷𝐬𝐬 hums. On second thought, I think I'm gonna try sticking his hand in warm water and see what happens. Do it and die, a new voice chimes in. and Izuku redirects his gaze to the second bed where 𝐀𝐦 has just awoken, hair tousled with sleep, frown already settled on his features. They must have roused him with their conversation, and Izuku almost feels bad. Almost. It's not like they weren't about to wake him up anyway. Now that you're up, you can settle this debate, 𝐲𝐬 decides. Does pineapple belong on pizza or not? 𝐀𝐦 yawns, raking a hand through his hair before answering. It's a petty argument designed by corporations to distract consumers from the rampant exploitation and injustice implicit in their capitalistic business structures. That's what I said, Denki points out with a huff. 𝐲𝐬 squints at him. No, you didn't. 𝐀𝐦 just rolls his eyes, climbing out of the bed and stretching his back. Whatever, I gotta pee. With that, he makes his way to the bathroom, disappearing inside. 𝐲𝐬 shifts the conversation again. Argument forgotten. Anyway, there's a takeout menu on the dresser if you want to have a look. And I'll cover the bill, my treat. And, okay, Izuku won't argue with that. Not when his own bank account is already crying from the strain of this trip. He untangles himself from his blankets, glancing around the room. Hey, does anyone remember if I took my glasses off before I fell asleep? Denki shrugs. If I'm being honest, I sort of forgot you had glasses. 𝐲𝐬 chuckles, shaking his head. I don't really remember you taking them off, man. Oh no. Izuku scrambles, searching the folds of his blankets for his glasses, praying to whatever deity that may be listening that he wouldn't find them irreparably broken. He's notoriously bad at packing his spare pair, and so far he's gotten away with it, but that story's bound to change eventually. He can only hope eventually isn't right now. He tears the couch apart, but finds nothing. He scours the carpeted floor, still nothing. His heart races in his chest, sweat pooling on his brow as he searches in vain for his glasses. But alas, they are gone, disappeared into the night, never to be seen again. They're right here, dumbass. 𝐀𝐦's voice draws him from his thoughts, and Izuku's head whips toward him, finding him standing just outside the bathroom door, what must be Izuku's glasses dangling from his fingers. Relief settles in his chest. That is, until 𝐀𝐦 nonchalantly tosses them towards him, and Izuku yelps in alarm as he scrambles to catch them before they meet their untimely death on the carpet. He's successful, miraculously so, and as he slips his glasses over his nose, he's met with a much clearer picture of a smirking 𝐀𝐦 across the room. Izuku frowns at him. What was that for? 𝐀𝐦 just shrugs a shoulder. Felt like it. He makes his way back over to his bed, flopping down on top of it. Now will someone hurry up and order food in? I'm starving. Izuku sighs as he lowers himself into the hot tub later that evening, reveling in the feel of the hot water and soothing jets on his travel-stiff muscles. Honestly, there's nothing quite as relaxing as submerging your body in water, Izuku thinks, sinking further into the tub as he grows further accustomed to the temperature. He's pretty sure there's a scientific reason for it, some sort of biological response not lost to years of evolution, but he can't quite remember what it is exactly. Maybe he'd have to look it up later, once he gets back to the room. He makes a mental note. He lets his eyes drift shut, head resting against the tiles behind him as he allows the water to soothe his anxieties, worries carried away on the jet's gentle currents. Now that they had reached their destination, Izuku couldn't put off his planning any longer. In under 24 hours, he may finally meet his childhood hero, a dream he had never thought would come true, not for him. Nerves and excitement flutter in his core at the prospect, but there's a fear edging his excitement, tempering his anticipation. Not a fear of Yagi Toshinori. Of course, he had never subscribed to the warning to never meet your heroes, but of what was to come after. The real purpose of his trip. The confrontation 10 years in the making. A lump forms in his throat. He swallows it down, focusing on the gentle lapping of water against his chest. Breathe in, breathe out. He can confront his father. He will confront his father. He has to. It's the only way he will be able to get on with his life, to shed himself of his past and move forward into a brighter future. He needs this. But what if both addresses are wrong? What if his father doesn't want to see him? What if he makes things worse? Breathe in, breathe out. He still has to figure out a way to ditch the others long enough to check the addresses. Maybe he could skip out of the convention early and take a taxi or an Uber or something. The others would be none the wiser then. But the prospect of getting into some stranger's vehicle all alone in an unfamiliar city is almost more terrifying than the confrontation itself. Curse his social anxiety. It'd be easier if he could just drive himself. He'd have more control over the situation that way, more security. But the only available vehicle is 𝐀𝐦's car, which the others would be using at the time. So a taxi or Uber are his only options, really. Breathe in, breathe out. He'll be fine. He will. He can't let his fears hold him back anymore. How's the water? 𝐲𝐬's voice pulls Izuku from his thoughts, the latter opening his eyes to watch as the others approach the hot tub. They had taken a bit longer to get ready than Izuku had, too busy horsing around with one another. Izuku had honestly rushed a little to get away. They were just too much sometimes. Izuku shrugs in response to 𝐲𝐬's question. Hot, wet, or is it? Denki asks. He's met with groans and eye rolls. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 hops in without further preamble, sinking down right away to submerge his shoulders in the water. It takes the others a bit longer to settle in. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 tests the water with his feet first. Yep, definitely hot. And definitely wet. Denki finally settles down on the hot tub's bench. I don't know about wet, but it's definitely moist. You, don't use that word, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 complains, somehow managing to frown despite having closed his eyes, head tipped back against the edge of the tub. It's gross. It's not gross, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 says, slowly lowering himself into the water. You only think it's gross cause you're still a child, apparently. I'm not a child, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 retorts, glaring at 𝐼𝐻𝐬 with what's definitely a childish pout on his lips. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 quirks an eyebrow. Is that so? Oh please, name one childish thing I've done, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 challenges, though Izuku is being generous in marking that statement as a challenge. You mean like, in your life, or just the past 24 hours? 𝐼𝐻𝐬 asks, a grin spreading on his lips. Cause I bet I could list at least a dozen childish things you've done during this road trip alone. Izuku snorts at this, and all too suddenly 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's glare shifts to him. You got something you want to say, nerd? Izuku covers his mouth with his hand, trying to stifle his laughter as he shakes his head. No, I was just thinking that 𝐼𝐻𝐬's being pretty nice setting the minimum bar at 12 when it should be closer to like 30 or so. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 lunges across the hot tub at Izuku, but Denki's quick to intervene, grabbing the other boy around the shoulders and pushing him back onto the bench. Chill man, pool rules say no roughhousing. Besides, he adds, releasing a still fuming 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬, if anyone's gonna get us kicked out of here, it's gonna be me, thank you very much. He's got a point there, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 concedes, cocking his head in consideration. Denki's usually the one who gets us into trouble. You're too much of a goody two-shoes to cause any real harm. I'm not a goody two-shoes. But 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's protest is met only with laughter from his friends. I'm not. Dude, you so are, 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬 states. I mean, didn't you have near-perfect attendance in high school? And how many penalty minutes did you have last season? Huh, like 4 maybe. Denki adds, shaking his head. I mean, even when we had that huge line brawl at provincials, you didn't get involved. Yes, I did, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 insists. But still, the others don't believe him. Standing at the bench to keep Coach Aizawa from throwing hands with the ref afterwards does not count as getting involved, 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬 points out, and Denki nods in agreement. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 huffs, rolling his eyes. Whatever, that still doesn't make me a goody two-shoes. I mean, it makes you more of one than we are. Denki shrugs, like, you always get mad at us when we try to go in through an outdoor. Or that time we ran up the down escalator in the mall. That's called not being a dumbass, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 spits. Nah, it's called not being lame, Denki fires back. What do you think, Zuko? 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬 asks, turning his attention towards him. You've been oddly quiet. Izuku shrugs. I don't know, I'm not sure I'm the right person to weigh in on this topic. You're right, you aren't, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 says, but 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬 waves him off, attention still on Izuku. Come on, man. You've known Cat longer than us. You've gotta have some good stories about him. I'm sort of a unique case when it comes to Kakin, Izuku admits, and 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 shoots him a look, one almost daring him to speak. Oddly, Izuku doesn't feel as threatened by it as he probably should be. Maybe their talk last night had helped ease the tension between the two of them, even if ever so slightly. Or maybe Izuku is simply taking comfort in the fact that 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬 and Denki would intervene before 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 could bring him any harm. Either way, he's emboldened to continue. I mean, I'm sure you all are aware of our complicated past. Denki snorts. It's not complicated. You two were friends, and then Kakin became an asshole. Pretty simple, really. Izuku expects an angry retort from 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬, but the other boy is uncharacteristically silent, jaw tense and gaze pointedly avoiding everyone else, fixated instead on the bubbling jets in the water below. Odd, he almost looks guilty. But that wouldn't make sense. If 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 really were feeling guilty about the situation, he would have done something to rectify it by now, wouldn't he? Surprisingly, it's 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬 who replies. There's more to it than that, he points out, gaze shifting briefly to 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 before returning to Denki. But it's not really our business. Denki shrugs. Fair. But anyway, even if Cat was an asshole for whatever complicated reasons, it's not like he did anything too bad, right? Like, there's no way someone as goody-goody as Cat would actually risk getting in trouble. Yeah, you got a point. He really doesn't seem like the childhood bully type, 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬 says, nodding in agreement. I mean, I imagine his verbal taunts are much the same, but I can't really see him giving someone a swirly or getting into a fist fight on the playground or anything like that. Izuku chances a quick glance at 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬, finding the other's gaze already on him. Still, when their eyes meet, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's quick to look away. Izuku turns his head back to the others. Well, he's never given me swirlies. Izuku starts, shrugging a shoulder sheepishly, but we may have gotten into a few altercations over the years. Denki's eyes widen comically. What? Wait, are you saying that this guy right here, Katsuki, I go to bed at 8 p.m. Bakugo, and you, Izuku Cinnamon Roll Incarnate, I don't know your last name, have actually gotten into a fight? Like a physical fight? Izuku nods. Yeah, they were rare, but he shrugs again, before adding, it's Midoriya, by the way. My last name. Denki nods in acknowledgement. Meanwhile, Aijiru's gaze is focused on Katsuki, hurt painting his red eyes. Izuku had supposed Aijiru knew something of his and Katsuki's background, but apparently he didn't know everything. Katsuki's eyes remain fixed on the water. Honestly, I can't picture it, Denki is saying, oblivious to the rising tension. I mean, neither of you look like scrappers. There's no way you could have actually fought each other. Maybe some light shoving or like a slap, but not an actual fight. Like, we get it, okay. Katsuki finally snaps, interrupting the other boy. So shut up about it already. Seriously, it's not even a big deal anyway, so lay off. Aijiru scoffs. Actually, it is kind of a big deal. Katsuki stands abruptly, sending water splashing across the hot tub. No, this is stupid. I'm going back to the room. With that, he climbs out of the tub, making his way across the pool deck towards the door. Aijiru makes to follow. Cat, don't follow me, he snaps, not looking back. Aijiru pauses, partway out of the tub, probably unsure whether or not to listen to Katsuki's command. But when the door shuts behind the other boy, the redhead's shoulders sag, and he lowers himself back into the hot tub with a sigh. Denki huffs a laugh, trying to ease the tension. So that went well. Izuku runs a hand through his hair, slightly dampening his curls. I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't have brought it up. It's not your fault, Zuku. Aijiru says, gaze still on the door through which Katsuki left. Cat's just in a mood. Anything would have set him off. But still, Izuku tries to protest. But Denki cuts him off. Don't worry about it. He'll get over it soon enough. Denki then turns his attention to Aijiru. So in your expert opinion, does 𝐀𝐦 newfound bad boy persona make him more or less attractive? Aijiru's gaze whips towards Denki, eyes narrowed in a glare. Are you serious right now? What? To his credit, Denki looks genuinely perplexed by his friend's response. It's just a question. Aijiru scoffs, climbing out of the hot tub. I'm going for a swim. There's a splash as Aijiru enters the pool, Denki calling after him, wait, I'm sorry. It was just a joke. But Aijiru ignores him, disappearing under the surface of the water as he begins swimming laps. Denki slumps against the edge of the hot tub. The silence that settles is an uncomfortable one. Izuku shifts awkwardly in his seat, wondering if it's his place to really get involved. Obviously, Denki wasn't aware of what was going on between Katsuki and Aijiru lately, and at any other time, his joke might have been well received. But the timing was off this time, and Izuku can't help but feel sympathy for him. Izuku wants to reassure him, but he can't exactly explain the whole situation to the other boy. It's definitely not his place to share, and might make things worse in the end. Still, he can't just let Denki wallow in it. Hey, he says, drawing Denki's attention to himself, are you okay? Denki offers him a smile, but it's forced. Yeah, I'm good. He pauses, shrugging his shoulders. Gotta learn to read the room next time, or hot tub, rather. Izuku grins slightly at the joke. Are you sure? Yeah, totally. Denki grins a little bigger, reaching over to slap Izuku playfully on the shoulder. Don't worry about it, man. It's all good. Izuku just nods. He doesn't believe him. Not really, but he doesn't push the subject further. Denki doesn't want to talk about it, so Izuku won't force him. It's the best that he can offer right now. The tension has eased slightly when they return to the hotel room later, the trio laughing boisterously at an awful joke Denki's made. Still, their laughter cuts off abruptly as they enter the room, finding Katsuki pacing the carpeted floor, phone pressed to his ear and scowl painting his features. He acknowledges the three as they enter the room, then turns his back to them, mumbling into his phone, just, whatever, I don't care. I've gotta go. Everything okay, Kat? Aijiru asks, approaching the other boy cautiously. Katsuki just sighs, tossing his phone onto the bedspread and dragging his palms down his face. Yeah, it's ... it's fine. Was it your? Denki starts to ask, but a sharp look from Aijiru cuts him off. They both glance over at Izuku, and despite missing some pretty vital information regarding this situation, Izuku is smart enough to recognize when his presence is not desired. Whatever is going on with Katsuki, it's not about to be resolved with Izuku around. He jerks a thumb over at the bathroom door. I think I'm just gonna go take a shower now. Gotta rinse all this chlorine off and ... yeah. I'm just gonna go now. He darts into the bathroom before anyone can respond, quickly shutting and locking the door behind him. Real smooth, Izuku. That totally wasn't weird at all. He sighs, shaking his head at himself while he sets about trying to figure out the shower. It's only when he's finally managed to not only turn the shower on, but also find the right temperature for the water that he realizes that all of his toiletries are still in his suitcase, still out in the room where a highly personal conversation is quite possibly taking place. Maybe he could make do with the products offered by the hotel. He checks out the tiny shampoo and conditioner bottles. They're nothing special, definitely not made with curly hair in mind, and he groans. With his hair already as dry as it is in these winter months, he really can't afford to sacrifice moisture. Okay, maybe he could sneak back into the room and grab his hair products. Really, what were the chances that the three boys were actually discussing anything personal right now? As far as Izuku had observed lately, the trio had a tendency to avoid discussing anything too serious. Why would this be any different? Izuku leaves the water running, wrapping a towel around his waist before unlocking the door and pulling it open just enough to listen for voices in the other room. The water beats pretty loudly against the shower wall, but even so, Izuku can make out the murmur of voices. Do you think they'll actually go through with it this time? It's Aijiru's voice, Izuku thinks, unable to actually see the others from this angle. I don't know. Katsuki's the one to reply, voice tired. They've been arguing about it for so long now There's the shifting of bed springs, then a deep sigh. It sounded really bad this time, Katsuki continues. I mean, it's always been really bad, but this time it just seemed so final. Denki offers. There's no response, none that Izuku can hear, at least, and he knows he should probably close the door and get back to his shower, stop intruding on this conversation that they had made abundantly clear didn't concern him. But Izuku can't bring himself to tear his ear away. He's never heard Katsuki sound so defeated before. Not even during their late-night talk about Aijiru, and he can't help the heavy worry that coils deep within his core. How are you feeling about it all? Aijiru asks, and Izuku holds his breath as he waits for an answer. Katsuki huffs a humorless laugh. I don't know, I want it to be over already, you know. Like, they've been dragging it out for far too long and it's just not fair. They don't get that their actions right now affect more than just them, Denki observes. They don't realize how they're affecting you. Exactly. And I thought moving out would help, but they still keep relying on me when things get bad. Katsuki pauses, taking a deep breath. And it makes no sense. I mean, I'm their kid. I'm not supposed to be the one taking care of them. I can't be expected to make all their problems go away, to make everything better, and yet they seem to think that I should, and I can't. His voice breaks, and Izuku takes that as his cue to close the door and quit eavesdropping like some sort of nosy freak. He locks it again, then leans his back against the surface as he draws in a deep breath, hoping it will do something to ease the nausea in his stomach. And he's not really sure what's making him feel sicker, the guilt from listening in on such a private conversation, or the thought that Katsuki had been having so much difficulty with his parents lately. He tries not to dwell on it. With a sigh, Izuku returns to the shower, stepping under the spray and letting the warmth from the water soothe his nerves. He eyes the complimentary shampoo and conditioner again. Maybe the sacrifice was necessary this time. He'd rather his hair hate him than his three companions.